Chapter 890. With her current status as Wuxia's woman, she didn't need to care about a small world commerce chamber. Now that she was here, Yu Qianzhou had a better impression of himself. He sneered at himself for being afraid of retaliation for rejecting the other party's love. Yu Qianzhou felt that there must be some unknown inside story and wondered if he should ask Mu Tianjiao if there was a chance. In reality, they were overcomplicating the problem. Mu Tianjiao just couldn't handle the pressure from Immortal Palace. Du Feng and Hui Yunlong were a little depressed because they brought up the topic of Mu Tianjiao. Since Mu Tianjiao had already become Wuxia's woman, Yu Qianzhou couldn't say anything else. The atmosphere immediately became a little depressing. After they casually soaked in the hot spring, they got up. After putting on their clothes, they walked out and saw Long Xiaojiu coming out as well. When they met, the men noticed that Long Xiaojiu was full of energy and radiant after her bath. They were all surprised by the miraculous effects of the spring bath. They couldn't help but look at each other and realize that the men hadn't changed much. Is Wanling still soaking in there? Yu Qianzhou looked at the other end of the tunnel and asked. Long Xiaojiu chuckled and said, she encountered something unhappy, so she left first. The men looked at each other and guessed that the two women might be fighting again. Yu Qianzhou didn't say anything and led them out of the underground. After coming out, Shui Mingqing remembered what Yu Qianzhou had told him and bade farewell to everyone. Everyone thought that Wanling had left, but when they returned to the 6th floor, they found Wanling and Mu Tianjiao sitting opposite each other and chatting happily. When the two women saw them return, they stood up to greet them. Long Xiaojiu couldn't help but frown when she saw that Wanling seemed to be fine. The sky was already close to dusk, and the guests were about to leave when Yu Qianzhou smiled and urged them to stay. My 6th floor has always been used to entertain guests, and I haven't used it even once. Everyone, please do me the honor. In the evening, I would like to invite all of you to the rooftop to watch the stars and admire the moon, and to taste my World Chamber of Commerce's barbecue and wine. Looking at the sky outside, Wanling hesitated before she said, it's fine with us, but Sister Tianjiao's identity is a little sensitive. I'm afraid it won't be convenient for her to spend the night with a bunch of men. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. What does that have to do with anything? Aren't you and Miss Long a woman? Glancing at Long Xiaojiu, Wanling smiled. Miss Long and I don't have a good reputation in this field. I'm afraid that we might implicate Sister Tianjiao. She was really self-aware, but Long Xiaojiu was angered by her. It was all thanks to her that she was able to achieve her current reputation. They all knew the meaning of her words. Mu Tianjiao's current identity was indeed very sensitive. A little bit of gossip could cause trouble. If Suyi didn't return it and mixed with two women who were fighting over a man, who knew what kind of rumors would spread. Gossip was a fearful thing. Hearing this, Yu Qianzhou felt a toothache. In his mind, this was making a mountain out of a molehill, but if he was serious here, there were indeed many things to pay attention to. Seeing that he was having a headache, Du Feng smiled and said, Brother Yu, you don't have to worry too much. With so many people in the World Chamber of Commerce, it's not like you can't find a woman. Just hire one to accompany the guests. With a woman by your side, you can more or less avoid suspicion. Yu Qianzhou nodded slightly. There were also several women in the World Chamber of Commerce. After thinking about it, he still felt that it was most suitable for Lu Yanqing to accompany a guest like Mu Tianjiao. There was no need to do anything, just be a vase. In any case, it was just a decoration. This was because he found that other than treating people, Lu Yanqing basically couldn't do anything. Furthermore, her ability to handle things was extremely poor. He really didn't know how she had survived for so many years. Just like now, when she was given some work to do, she always had to get Wen Lanfeng's help in order to do it well. Just a small matter would require two people. At this moment, someone came down to report that two of Mu Tianjiao's guards had come to pick her up. Yu Qianzhou looked at Mu Tianjiao's intentions, then instructed his subordinate, invite them up, and also call Lu Yanqing over." That person agreed and left. Not long later, the two golden-robed men arrived. Mu Tianjiao cupped her hands and bowed, "I won't be leaving today. I'll stay at the World Chamber of Commerce for the night and leave tomorrow. I'll have to trouble the two of you to stay here for the night." The two golden-robed men cupped their hands in agreement. They had no objections. They were originally sent by Wuxiong to protect Mu Tianjiao or listen to her orders, so they had no right to control Mu Tianjiao's freedom. Mu Tianjiao then said to Yu Qianzhou with a smile, "I'll have to trouble sect leader Yu to arrange 2 rooms for them." Yu Qianzhou nodded and said, "Since they were sent by the commander to protect you, then arrange for them to be on the left and right side of your room. What do you think?" Mu Tianjiao knew that he was using this to get Wuxiong's people to avoid arousing suspicion, so she agreed. The two maintained a certain level of respect in their words and actions. In reality, Yu Qianzhou hated doing this kind of thing the most, because he knew that the two of them couldn't be pure friends. He was a man, and the other was Wuxiong's woman. Even if the other party condescended to treat him, he still had to keep his distance. Even if the other party wasn't Wuxiong's woman, imagine a man always maintaining a close friendship with someone else's wife. Pure friendship. In his previous life, there might be quite a few pure and upright gentlemen who would agree with this reason. Of course, the important premise was that the other party's wife had to be ugly, making it hard for others to lay their hands on her. Otherwise, if pure and upright gentlemen saw the two of them being too close, there would inevitably be times when their stomachs would bubble. However, in this era where both men and women had long hair, if you were too close to someone else's wife, not to mention everything else, just their saliva could drown you. Moreover, Yu Qianzhou himself didn't believe that handsome men and beautiful women would always stick together and have a pure friendship. Perhaps there might be, but unfortunately, he had never encountered such a thing. Even if nothing happened, the hearts of both men and women would still itch. Of course, this was mainly because he wasn't broad-minded enough, always measuring the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. There was no helping it. He felt like he was one of the many wolves, wearing sheep's clothing, but deep down, he was still a wolf. He also always imagined that he was the only wolf in the world, and that everyone else was a pure lamb. Therefore, he consciously maintained an appropriate distance from Mu Tianjiao. Naturally, he took a fancy to Mu Tianjiao's identity and hoped that she could help him at a critical moment. And Mu Tianjiao condescended to come here, hoping to give the Four Links Chamber of Commerce an escape route in the uncertain future. In reality, Du Feng and the others also tried their best to keep their distance from Mu Tianjiao. Of course, women like Wan Ling didn't have such scruples. Instead, the closer the relationship, the better. Not long after, Lu Yanqing slowly arrived. Lu Yanqing's arrival immediately caused the eyes of the guests in the living room to light up. Although Du Feng and the others had entered the Divine Ruin realm before, because Lu Yanqing didn't like to fight and kill, she always hid behind the lords of the various countries when they appeared. In addition, she knew that her appearance was outstanding, so when there were too many people, she tried her best not to show her face, so no one, including Mu Tianjiao, had seen her. This is Lu Yanqing. After Yu Qianzhou introduced Lu Yanqing to everyone, he then introduced Mu Tianjiao to Lu Yanqing. This is the fiancée of the Immortal Palace's External Affairs Commander Wuxiong. It's inconvenient for her to stay with us men, so you should stay close to her before she leaves. Lu Yanqing faintly smiled at everyone. This smile immediately made Du Feng and Hui Yunlong unable to move their eyes away. Wan Ling and the other women suddenly felt ashamed of their inferiority. They didn't expect the World Chamber of Commerce to have such a beautiful woman. Help me greet the guests. Yu Qianzhou instructed Lu Yanqing, then cupped his hands towards the crowd and said, "Everyone, please take a seat, I have something to do, I'll be right back." The few of them were a little absent-minded when they saw Lu Yanqing, and didn't notice that Yu Qianzhou had left. After Yu Qianzhou left, he went straight to the top floor. He didn't see Wei Chuanxiu at first, but later on, he felt that it was a little strange. This guy always liked to follow behind him, but now that half a day had passed, he still hadn't seen him. He had noticed it when he came up from below, but he didn't see Wei Chuanxiu. Now, he suspected that Wei Chuanxiu was with Yun Peng. As he expected, when he reached the top floor, Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng were standing side by side at the edge of the railing. Yu Qianzhou was suspicious in his heart. Why was this old fellow so patient today to accompany Yun Peng on guard? As soon as he appeared, Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng also turned to look. Without waiting for the smiling Yu Qianzhou to speak, Wei Chuanxiu was already waving at him. Yu Qianzhou, I was just looking for you. Yu Qianzhou was startled, and found that both of their faces were a little serious. After approaching the two of them, he asked suspiciously, looking for me? What's the matter? Wei Chuanxiu was silent for a moment, then said solemnly, after coming back, I have been discussing this matter with Yun Peng. Because this matter is of great importance, Yun Peng also thought that he should find you to clarify this matter. Although I don't know if you will answer honestly, I still have to ask you. Yu Qianzhou's eyes flashed, and he vaguely guessed what was going on. Before, he didn't pay attention, but after doing that, he regretted it a little. But after thinking about it, there was nothing to regret. Hiding everything was not a solution. After all, he couldn't just take a beating and not fight back. What's the matter? You make it sound like it's something serious. Yu Qianzhou said with a puzzled expression. Do you still remember the myriad swords burst that you used in the battle earlier? Wei Chuanxiu said word by word, right now, there are people who suspect that you are related to the myriad swords demon lord. You should also know that the immortal world and the netherworld cannot tolerate the remnants of the myriad swords demon lord. Suspect that I am related to the myriad swords demon lord? Yu Qianzhou pointed at his own nose, as if he heard the world's funniest joke, and said, I actually hope that I can be related to the myriad swords demon lord, but it is a pity that it is impossible. The myriad swords demon lord has been dead for so many years. Who is so bored to actually connect me with the myriad swords demon lord? The Chamber of Commerce Alliance's great bright will controller. Wei Chuanxiu's green brows knitted together, and her expression was abnormally serious. In reality, you need to go and explain to him. We are only asking you to have an idea in our hearts, so that we can prepare early. We have no ill intentions towards you. Saying that, she waved her hand and pointed around. Do you believe that the Chamber of Commerce Alliance has already arranged people around here? If it wasn't for the two of us, the Great Bright Will Controller would have already taken action. In short, if you don't give him a satisfactory answer, it is impossible for you to leave the hallucination immortal city. Chapter 891. The sky gradually darkened. Yu Qianzhou slowly turned around on the rooftop, scanning his surroundings. Although he didn't see anyone from the Chamber of Commerce Alliance, since Wei Chuanxiu had said this, it must be true that someone was watching him. I really have nothing to do with the Thousand Swords Demon Monarch. Yu Qianzhou shook his head helplessly. A person who's been dead for God knows how many years can still cause such a commotion. This Thousand Swords Demon Monarch didn't die in vain. What does the Great Bright Will Wielder want to know? I want to know why you can control 10,000 swords. A voice came from behind him. Yu Qianzhou suddenly turned his head and saw a thin, golden-robed Ming Luan appear behind him without him noticing. Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng's expressions were normal. Clearly, they already knew that the Great Bright Will was here. Greetings to the Great Bright Will Wielder. Yu Qianzhou cupped his hands and explained, I'm just a vagrant cultivator with slightly better luck. I really have nothing to do with the Thousand Swords Demon Monarch. The Great Bright Will coldly interrupted, no one cares about your background and luck. I don't want to hear this, and the Immortal Emperor won't listen to this nonsense. No matter how noble your background is, it means nothing to him. Don't beat around the bush. Just explain clearly why you can control 10,000 swords like the Thousand Swords Demon Monarch. Then what should he say? Yu Qianzhou was startled. There was such a person in this world. A person who didn't care about the cause and effect and only wanted the final answer. Was this person still human? He couldn't help but look at Wei Chuanxiu. Wei Chuanxiu seemed to see through his doubts and transmitted, "There's nothing strange. Immortal Emperor Jin Tai has ruled the immortal world for so long. There are very few things that can interest him. I just heard from the Great Bright Will that immortal Emperor Jin Tai doesn't care about anything. Most of the things are handled by his subordinates. He only cares about the final result. If anyone dares to lie to him, he will kill them once he finds out. Seems like a poor fellow who has lost the joy of life." Yu Qianzhou scratched his head and said, "The sword technique I'm practicing is called Guiyuan sword technique. It has nothing to do with the legendary myriad swords demon monarch. Is that okay? Guiyuan sword technique?" The three of them pondered for a moment. They seemed to have never heard of this technique before. The Great Bright Will then asked simply, "How can you prove that what you said is true?" Yu Qianzhou was prepared for this. He took out a jade archive and handed it over. "This is the Guiyuan sword technique that I'm practicing. If you don't believe me, you can verify it." De Mingluan took the jade archive and examined it. He confirmed that it was indeed a sword technique. He didn't care whether Yu Qianzhou agreed to it or not. He put it away and said, "It's hard to tell if it's real or fake. I'll keep it for now. If I can confirm that this sword technique can truly control 10,000 swords, I'll send someone to return it to you." Wei Chuanxiu frowned and said, "Great Bright Wheel, I'm afraid that's not appropriate. A cultivation technique is the foundation of a cultivator. It's the most important thing to keep a secret. In order to prove his innocence, he's already taken it out for you to see. You still don't believe him? You still want to take it away? To the Immortal Palace, as long as the Immortal Palace needs it, they have the right to pry into any secret in the immortal realm," the Great Bright Will said indifferently. "You." Wei Chuanxiu was instantly enraged. Yu Qianzhou hurriedly pulled him back and said, "This sword art is actually just a facade. The 10,000 swords might look quite frightening, but it's actually just for show. It doesn't have much power at all. If you want to take it, then take it. As long as you can prove my innocence, you don't have to return it. Anyway, I've made a few copies here." Actually, the sword technique he was practicing was modified. The one he gave to the Great Bright Wheel was the original version of the supporting Immortals Island. It didn't matter if he wanted it or not. Even if he took 10,000 steps back, it was necessary to sacrifice something in exchange for his innocence. After exchanging some pleasantries, Wei Chuanxiu suddenly said to Yu Qianzhou, "Go on with your business. We have some private things to talk about." Yu Qianzhou glanced at the three, cupped his fists, and left with a stomach full of complaints. He didn't know what these three old fellows were plotting. They actually wanted him to leave. After watching him leave, Wei Chuanxiu said with a worried expression, "Great Bright Wheel, tell me honestly, will Immortal Emperor Jin Taixiang believe it?" "Whether or not Immortal Emperor Jin Taixiang believes it depends on the attitude of the two of you," the Great Bright Will said indifferently. Wei Chuanxiu and Yunpeng looked at each other in confusion. Wei Chuanxiu asked suspiciously, "What do you mean?" "Nothing." The Great Bright Will slowly turned around and placed his hands on the white jade railing. He silently stared at the crescent moon that shone with silver radiance for a while before asking, "Yunpeng has always been cultivating in White Cloud Mountain, and you have disappeared for so many years. What I don't understand is why the two of you would appear in such a manner to serve Yu Qianzhou. What's his background to be worthy of you doing this? What's the relationship between the two of you? For the sake of Yu Qianzhou, is it really worth it for the two of you to involve yourselves in this matter? If he really is related to the Myriad Swords Demon Lord, you should know what the consequences are." Yunpeng's calm gaze flickered as he stared at the Great Bright Wheel. Wei Chuanxiu frowned and said, "Didn't Yu Qianzhou even take out his own cultivation technique? I don't think it's fake. With this kind of irrefutable evidence, how can we not prove that he's related to the Myriad Swords Demon Lord? Irrefutable evidence? You mean this? The great bright wheel, who had both hands on the white jade railing, turned around and took out the jade archive that Yu Qianqiu had given him. In front of Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng, he crushed it into powder. Wei Chuanxiu exclaimed, "Great bright wheel, what do you mean by this? What do you think I mean?" The great bright wheel snorted coldly, "So what if it's irrefutable evidence? Do you really think that the immortal Emperor Jin Tai would go through so much trouble for the sake of a mere Yu Qianqiu? I can tell you without a doubt that he would rather kill the wrong person than let him off. 3 days. Within 3 days, the news will definitely reach his ears, and within these 3 days, he will be waiting for news from me. If he doesn't hear from me within 3 days, then 3 days later, the Immortal Palace enforcers will depart from the Immortal Palace. Needless to say, Yu Qianqiu's death is certain. The entire World Commerce Chamber of Commerce will also face a massacre, including those who are close to him. Not a single one of them will survive. And because of my incompetence, I will also be punished." The exceptionally enchanting moonlight instantly turned cold and gloomy. At least, that was what Yun Peng and Wei Chuanxiu felt at this moment. They were among those who were close to Yu Qianqiu, but they too would not be able to escape death. After a moment of silence on the cold rooftop, Wei Chuanxiu broke the silence, saying, "Then why did you want Yu Qianqiu to give a reasonable explanation? Isn't this unnecessary?" The great bright wheel suddenly turned and faced the moonlit mountains outside. He slowly said, "I just wanted to test him. At least let me die in peace." The two at the side looked at each other, not knowing why he would say such a thing. Yun Peng, who had been silent all this time, said coldly, "It's not that serious. Didn't you join the Immortal Palace to live well? Now that you are in charge of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance, the word death is too far away from you." The rooftop sank into a brief silence. The great bright wheel slowly closed his eyes. "Yun Peng, back then, the 3 of us settled our debts of gratitude and revenge in the immortal world. You should know how many people we offended. At that time, our situation was already precarious. The Immortal Palace recruited us because of this. Do you think I don't want to be free? Do you think I don't want to be free? If one of you had been willing to accept the Immortal Palace's recruitment, I definitely wouldn't have accepted it. However, the 2 of you refused to join the Immortal Palace no matter what, so I was the unlucky one." "What do you mean?" Wei Chuanxiu asked in confusion. "What does whether we joined the Immortal Palace have to do with whether you joined the Immortal Palace or not?" The great bright wheel closed his eyes and didn't speak. It seemed like he didn't want to explain anymore. Yun Peng's body shook. He stared at the great bright wheel and said, "Looks like we have misunderstood you all these years. But why didn't you explain back then?" The great bright wheel opened his eyes and looked into the dark night. He smiled bitterly and said, "If I really explained it back then, I'm afraid the 2 of you would have fought to join. I wanted to explain it to you later, but you didn't even give me a chance. Later, because of the fierce internal strife in the Immortal Palace, I thought it would be better not to contact you too, lest I hurt you." Yun Peng wasn't good at expressing his emotions. He just nodded slightly to show that he understood. Wei Chuanxiu's head kept shaking left and right. He looked from one to the other and pulled his hair with both hands. He said anxiously, "What are you 2 talking about? Why don't I understand? Aren't you very good at cheating?" Yun Peng was sarcastic, but he still reminded him in the end, "Back then, we had too many enemies and were chased everywhere. Later, he joined the Immortal Palace and we immediately became much more relaxed. We didn't have to run for our lives anymore." At this point, Wei Chuanxiu wasn't stupid. Combining what the 2 had just said, the misunderstandings from the past immediately disappeared. In short, the great bright wheel had joined the Immortal Palace because he had no choice. They had caused too much trouble and were chased every 2 or 3 days. In the end, they had provoked more and more experts. Seeing that everyone was about to die, the immortal palace had extended an olive branch to them. However, Yunpeng and Wei Chuanxiu would rather die than submit. They were unwilling to join the immortal palace and be restrained. As a good brother, the great Bright will naturally knew the knot in the hearts of the two brothers. This was because the immortal palace was the place with the most tamed immortal beasts in the entire immortal world. They were also immortal beasts, so they didn't like the immortal palace. Although the great Bright will didn't want to be restrained, he had no choice. In order to protect his life and his brothers, he could only compromise. Who knew that because of this, the brothers wouldn't get along? They had been misunderstood for so long. Today, the injustice was cleared. Yunpeng, do you think this guy joined the immortal palace to save his life because he couldn't escape as fast as the two of us? Wei Chuanxiu laughed. Yunpeng, who was beside him, nodded. Under the starry sky, the three of them unknowingly stood side by side in front of the white jade railing. Just like many years ago, a bright moon shone in the sky and the shadows of green and jade wings followed. Chapter 892. With the years of estrangement gone, the three of them stood side by side in front of the white jade railing and immediately began to talk about everything. Wei Chuanxiu was puzzled and asked, "You just said that Jin Tai Xiang will have to see our attitudes if he doesn't believe you. What do you mean by that? If Yu Qianzhou is not closely related to the two of you, what does his life or death have to do with me? What does the life or death of others have to do with me? Although the two of you are with him, with my current position in the immortal palace, it is not difficult to protect the two of you." De Mingluan looked left and right and sighed. If the two of you really have an extraordinary relationship with him, then I can only do my best to be a guarantor in front of Jin Tai Xiang and guarantee that Yu Qianzhou has nothing to do with the demon lord of thousand swords. Yunpeng was not good with words and tilted his head to look at Wei Chuanxiu, but Wei Chuanxiu frowned and did not say anything. In fact, De Mingluan had another hidden meaning that even if he were to be a guarantor in front of immortal Emperor Jin Tai might not give him face and might even implicate him. There are some things that I can't tell you now. Let's talk about it when the time is right. In short, Yu Qianzhou is very important now and cannot die. Wei Chuanxiu muttered slowly. It was not that he wanted to hide it from the two of them, but the Thousand Demon Heart Sutra had too many implications. Although the demon lord of thousand swords was powerful, he was certainly not a match for an expert like the demon god. Once the 10,000 Demonic Heart Sutra written by Tai Shuzheng, who was on the same level as the devil god, was exposed, no one would be able to have an easy time. At that time, Jin Tai would probably kill everyone who was involved, and would not show any mercy. He did not want Yunpeng and De Mingluan to worry about the matter until he had absolute confidence that it could be resolved. In that case, I will personally go to the Immortal Palace and meet the Immortal Emperor to be a guarantor for Yu Qianzhou. De Mingluan said lightly. Yunpeng suddenly turned and asked, "Will there be any danger?" Wei Chuanxiu also looked over and De Mingluan shook his head. "There shouldn't be any problems. After all, he has served Jin Tai Xiang for so many years. However, if one day it is proven that this Yu Qianzhou is indeed related to the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch, then we will be out of luck." He purposely spoke casually, but in reality, he had no confidence in meeting Jin Tai. The main reason was that the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch was truly a taboo to Jin Tai. If not for the fact that the 10,000 Swords Demon Lord was already dead, the Great Bright Will wouldn't even need to think about it. They wouldn't even need to look for Jin Tai. They could just escape together. Before he left, De Mingluan suddenly took out an item and handed it to Wei Chuanxiu, saying, "After being in charge of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance for so many years, it's not like I've come back empty-handed. I accidentally stumbled upon this." With that said, it seemed like he didn't want to see anything else and turned into a stream of light and flew away. Wei Chuanxiu's little eyes widened and in that instant, her eyes were filled with tears. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at the thing in her palm and muttered absent-mindedly, "Xiao Yu, Yunpeng tilted his head to take a look, and his pupils immediately shrank. This was a small blue bat jade pendant that was not even half the size of a palm. Although it was carved with the same ferocious face as Wei Chuanqiu's original form, it was small and exquisite, and had many cute points. Others didn't know what this blue bat jade pendant meant, but Yunpeng and the Great Bright Wheel were very clear about it. Back then, Wei Chuanqiu wasn't a loner. He had a wife and a daughter. Later on, because Wei Chuanqiu caused some trouble, his enemies came looking for him. Coincidentally, Wei Chuanqiu wasn't around, so his wife and daughter were not spared. It was also because of this that the furious Wei Chuanqiu, Yunpeng and the Great Bright Wheel annihilated the entire enemy's family. This also implicated more and more trouble, and the three of them were constantly being pursued until the Great Bright Wheel joined the Immortal Palace. And this blue bat jade pendant was personally carved by Yunpeng, and he gave it to Wei Chuanqiu's daughter as a gift. Although this little thing wasn't worth much, it was something that Xiao Yu had always worn. It had been lost for many years, and she didn't expect that the Great Bright Wheel would find it. To Wei Chuanqiu, it had an extraordinary meaning. To Yunpeng, it also had an extraordinary meaning. Woo woo. Xiao Yu, Wei Chuanqiu sat on the rooftop and hugged the jade pendant with both hands as he cried his heart out. Yunpeng shook his head, sighing lightly. Knowing that Wei Chuanqiu needed to vent, he allowed Wei Chuanqiu to cry without stopping him. It was fortunate that the three of them had set up a soundproofing barrier before their conversation, otherwise it would have alerted the entire World Commerce Hall. As the sky darkened, passing by the 6th floor, Yu Qianzhou saw that Mu Tianjiao's group was chatting happily with Lu Yanqing, so he did not disturb them. Instead, he went down to the trading center below. Although there were still quite a lot of people here, it was obvious that there were fewer people than during the day. After strolling from the 1st floor back to the 5th floor, Yu Qianzhou pushed open the side hall's door and walked in. Jing Yuankong, who was settling accounts inside, quickly stood up seeing Huang Xiaolong's arrival. Yu Qianzhou looked out the transparent crystal window, taking in the scene outside with a smile. How's the situation? Up until now, we've sold 30 billion divine-grade spirit stones worth of herbs. Jing Yuankong answered excitedly. He was used to seeing spirit stones in the human world's World Commerce Hall, but he had never seen so many spirit stones. Only 30 billion? Yu Qianzhou's brows wrinkled slightly. The immortal herbs he put up for sale were valued at around 80 billion, which meant that they hadn't even reached half of the sales. It's like this. Jing Yuankong immediately explained, there are many immortal herbs that aren't sold in high quantities, on the contrary, the higher the value, the better they sell. Should we put up some good immortal herbs for sale? Yu Qianzhou pondered for a moment, then slowly shook his head. No need, we'll slowly sell the rest of the immortal herbs. We'll sell them for a month. It's better if we can sell them all, but it's fine if we can't. We also pay attention to the method of seeking wealth. There's no need to rush, otherwise, going too far is as bad as falling short. He was well aware that putting up so many immortal herbs was already too conspicuous. If there was a steady stream of good stuff appearing on the shelves, it would be hard not to arouse suspicion. Only by stopping in moderation would they be able to handle the situation with ease. On top of that, the Celestial Ruin Realm had just opened, so they could cover it up. Jing Yuankong immediately understood Huang Xiaolong's meaning, remembering that they had just established a foothold in the immortal world. If they acted too conspicuously, it would only bring trouble to themselves. Jing Yuankong immediately nodded. Understood, I'll arrange for all the immortal herbs to be sold on the 1st floor tomorrow. You know this better than me, you can decide how to sell the immortal herbs. Yu Qianzhou said a few words, then returned to the 6th floor with his hands clasped behind his back. Inside the everlasting trade hall, for some unknown reason, the elders of the 4 sects who had supported Yu Qianzhou earlier in the day were gathered together again, each of them wearing a worried expression. After a moment of silence, Wang Gui said solemnly, although his methods are similar to the Myriad Sword's demon lords, that doesn't prove that he's related to the Myriad Sword's demon lord. Moreover, the Myriad Swords Demon Lord has been dead for a long time. Yafuzi shook his head slowly. Nothing is absolute. Maybe he picked up the Myriad Swords Demon Lord's cultivation technique and became the Myriad Swords Demon Lord's disciple. Du Kairen, who was sitting at the side, snorted coldly. Whether Yu Qianzhou is related to the Myriad Swords Demon Lord or not is secondary, the key is Immortal Emperor Jin Tai. He's a person who can't tolerate sand in his eyes. He won't allow another Myriad Swords Demon Lord to appear in the immortal world. Anything that can threaten him will be eradicated by him. This is an undeniable fact. Today, when we went to support Yu Qianzhou's event, we've undoubtedly dragged the 4 sects into the water, more or less implicated. The corner of Hu Yanqing's mouth twitched. Could it be that just because we supported Yu Qianzhou's event, the Immortal Emperor is going to implicate the 4 of us? Du Kairen said in a deep voice, it's precisely because we are the 4 great sects and not some ordinary small sect that we came to support a small world commerce association. This is the biggest reason for suspicion. The Immortal Emperor is a temperamental person, no one knows what he is thinking. If he really suspects us, then how could he give us a chance to explain? He simply doesn't put our 4 clans in his eyes. If he wants to eradicate us, it would only take a single word from him. Everyone's expressions changed and became unsightly. Wang Gai sighed softly. If it's a blessing, it's not a curse, and if it's a curse, we can't avoid it. It's not a solution for us to make wild guesses here, we can only take one step at a time. Right now, it's more important to call back those juniors and avoid arousing suspicion. Don't get too entangled with Yu Qianzhou. Secondly, everyone should quickly report this matter to their sects and make preparations early. Otherwise, when disaster strikes, we won't be caught unprepared. On the rooftop of the World Commerce Association, the aroma of barbecued meat and fine wine filled the air again. Yu Qianzhou once again displayed his barbecue skills. As he fiddled with the barbecue, Yu Qianzhou felt a little strange. He saw Wei Chuanxiu sitting by the white jade railing in the distance, his head buried in something, while Yunpeng silently stood by his side. Not long after, the food that Yu Qianzhou had meticulously prepared was placed on everyone's table. Just as everyone was about to eat heartily, someone came up from downstairs and reported to Yu Qianzhou with cupped fists, "Sect Master. Wan Gu Tong, Mythical Fire Palace, and Spirit Cultivation Sect have all sent people over, saying that they have important matters to attend to and ask their disciples to return quickly." Wan Ling and the others looked at each other, not knowing what had happened. Why did the 3 great sects all send people to summon them? They guessed that something big must have happened and couldn't sit still anymore. They all stood up and left without eating anything. Thus, only Yu Qianzhou, Mu Tianjiao, Lu Yanqing, and Long Xiaojiao were left. But not long after, someone came to report that the Hidden Dragon Manor had also sent people to urge Long Xiaojiao to return quickly. Seeing that Long Xiaojiao had also left, Yu Qianzhou immediately felt a little strange. He frowned and said, "All the sects said something happened. Could it be that something big happened in the immortal world?" Mu Tianjiao and Lu Yanqing looked at each other. They were even more confused. Because the 3 of them had their own thoughts, the barbecue didn't taste good. In the end, Lu Yanqing still accompanied Mu Tianjiao to rest. Only then did Yu Qianzhou walk over to where Yunpeng and Wei Chuanxiu were. When he barged into the soundproofing barrier, he discovered Wei Chuanxiu sitting on the ground, sobbing. He immediately cried out in alarm, "Bat King Wei, what's wrong? Did Great Bright Will hit you?" Chapter 893. Wei Chuanxiu didn't react to his words and continued to sit there crying. Yunpeng, on the other hand, turned around and glared at him. Yu Qianzhou shrank his neck slightly. "Senior Yun, what happened to him?" Yunpeng kept his mouth shut and did not answer, but Wei Chuanxiu's sobs kept bouncing out the word, "Xiao Yu." Yu Qianzhou immediately squatted down beside him and asked curiously, "Bat King Wei, who is Xiao Yu, Is she your old lover?" Yunpeng couldn't bear it anymore and shouted, don't talk nonsense here, Xiao Yu, is his daughter. His daughter? Yu Qianzhou stood up and said in surprise, his daughter is here? Where is she? Where is she? Is she beautiful? Don't tell me she's made from the same mold as the old bat. As he spoke, he looked around. However, although there were constantly flowing lights in the dark night sky, how could he tell who was who? Bastard! Yunpeng couldn't bear it anymore and roared, his daughter has been dead for tens of thousands of years. Died for tens of thousands of years. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. After a while, he sat beside Wei Chuanxiu and patted his back, comforting him, Bat King Wei, the dead can't come back to life, my condolences. It would have been better if he didn't comfort him, but once he did, there was a problem. Wei Chuanxiu immediately wailed loudly, Xiao Yu, Xiao Yu, It's father's fault. I've harmed you and your mother. What did I do to offend you? Yu Qianzhou only felt his eardrums tremble and his scalp go numb. He was speechless and quickly got up to stand beside Yunpeng. How did his daughter die? And what's going on with the great bright will manager of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance? Yu Qianzhou picked his ears and asked Yunpeng. In the end, he realized that Yunpeng didn't care about him at all. Instead, he walked out of the soundproof enchantment and seemed to be concentrating on listening to something. Yu Qianzhou was slightly taken aback. He listened attentively and immediately discovered that Wei Chuanxiu's loud cries were accompanied by the faint sounds of a zither. He also stepped out of the soundproof enchantment, and Wei Chuanxiu's cries were immediately cut off. In the quiet night, there was a faint singing sound that sounded like the spirits of a beautiful woman. It was very pleasant to listen to. The sound came from downstairs. I have a flower that grows in my heart. No one understands true love. After Yu Qianzhou heard it clearly, his expression twitched. He knew that it was Lu Yanqing who was playing and singing. Tilting his head to look at Yunpeng, he discovered that Yunpeng's usually calm face had a look of surprise, as if he had heard the sound of nature. Yu Qianzhou looked at Wei Chuanxiu, who was still crying non-stop, and was completely speechless. He realized that he had nothing in common with these two experts tonight, so he immediately flung his sleeves and left. Inside the Wangu Tong branch, Wan Ling was stunned after hearing Wan Gei's analysis, then she covered her mouth and giggled, gasping for breath as she said, "You guys actually think that Yu Qianzhou is related to the 10,000 Swords Demon Lord?" He. Wan Gei frowned, saying solemnly, "Wan Ling, regardless of whether the 10,000 Swords Demon Lord is related to Yu Qianzhou or not, based on Immortal Emperor Jin Tai's cold-bloodedness, as long as there is such a possibility, he will be punished immediately. We have no choice but to take precautions. It's better to distance ourselves from him for now. Don't be stubborn, think about it carefully. I'm going to report this matter to the sect leader." Just as he was about to leave, he heard Wan Ling giggling behind him, "Elder, please stay, there's no need to report this matter to grandfather. Don't worry, Immortal Emperor Jin Tai will definitely not pursue this matter, and grandfather will not take it to heart." Wan Gei turned around, saying, "This matter is not a small matter. If something happens, no one can bear the responsibility, the sect leader has to make the decision himself." Finished, no matter how Wan Ling tried to persuade him, he directly left. Wan Ling could only shake her head helplessly. The reason why she was so calm in the face of chaos was because she knew that Yu Qianzhou was Immortal Emperor Jin Tai's trusted spy. If she knew that Yu Qianzhou was a fake, who knew if she would still be so calm? Not long after, Wan Gei returned with a puzzled expression. Wan Ling smiled at him, asking, "What is the sect leader's opinion?" Wan Gei shook his head in a muffled voice. When he contacted the sect leader to report this matter, Wan Busheng was only dazed for a moment before asking him what Wan Ling's opinion was. Wan Gei naturally conveyed Wan Ling's opinion to the sect leader, but Wan Busheng immediately expressed that Wan Ling could make the decision on this matter. "Wan Ling, is there an inside story behind this that I don't know?" Wan Gei asked suspiciously. Wan Ling shook her head with a smile and said, Elder Wan, there are some things that you shouldn't ask. It won't do you any good if you know. The former immediately choked and became speechless. Although Wan Gui and Wan Ling had the same ancestor and were much older than Wan Ling, in reality, Wan Ling was actually several generations older than Wan Gui. This kind of phenomenon was very common in the various sects and clans, and the reason for it was naturally because the lifespan of immortal cultivators was too long, and the time difference in carrying on the family line was too great. So the various sects in the immortal dimension would normally stop addressing each other according to seniority after a gap of 4 generations, and they would usually address each other by position or name. Of course, positions were not taken according to seniority, but according to cultivation and ability. From this, it could be seen that it would indeed be troublesome if everyone in the family became old fogies. However, it was human nature to have children, and even immortals were never tired of it. In the celestial bestowment state, in the sky above the main peak of the paradise immortal realm, there was a majestic palace that shone with a golden light. The moment the great bright will flew into the mountain range of the pure bliss immortal realm, it was immediately subjected to layers of interrogation. However, with the golden sunset token in his hand, his journey could be said to be unimpeded, and he directly flew up to the half of the mountain peak that was floating in the air. The top of the mountain had been pushed to the ground, and the ground was paved with shiny golden bricks, forming a huge golden plaza. There were golden pillars, golden towers, golden arch bridges, and golden railings everywhere. In addition to the towering golden palace in the distance, this was a golden kingdom, a golden world. Deming Luan didn't know why the immortal emperor liked gold so much, but he knew that other than the inner guards of the immortal palace, no one else was allowed to fly in the golden plaza. As soon as he landed in front of the righteous heaven gate, on this golden plaza, 2 golden-robed guards standing with their halberds raised immediately waved their spears to stop him. Deming Luan pushed out a token that shone with golden light with a single palm, and the 2 guards immediately returned to their original positions. Flying was prohibited here, so the great bright will could only obediently walk along the main axis straight to the immortal palace in the distance. This was the main path to the immortal palace, and there were railings on both sides with all kinds of immortal beasts carved on them. After walking for a short while, he saw an expressionless person walking over from the direction of the immortal palace. Deming Luan and that person were startled for a moment, then they both revealed a smile and walked face to face. That person was none other than the immortal palace's external affairs great commander Wuxia. The 2 of them had a good relationship in the immortal palace. Brother Wu, long time no see. Deming Luan cupped his hands and smiled. I heard that you are about to get married, but I have seen your little wife in the illusion immortal city. You are a man, but you found a wife who looks like a spring onion, aren't you afraid of crushing her? Don't make fun of me, when the time comes, you will definitely drink at the wedding. The short-bearded Wuxiong smiled bitterly. Recently, there really were many people in the immortal palace who used this to make fun of him. He waved his hand and said, Why did you come here for no reason? Are you looking for the immortal emperor? That's right. Deming Luan smiled, but his eyebrows slightly moved. Who knew what he was thinking when he saw Wuxiong? Then there is no need to go to the immortal palace. I just went there, and the immortal emperor is not there. He said he went to the newly built dancing immortal palace below. It just so happens that my wedding day is approaching, and I want to ask for leave from the immortal emperor. Why don't we go together? Wuxiong waved his hand and invited. Oh! What a coincidence, it just so happens to go there. Deming Luan smiled and the 2 of them walked out side by side. Just as Deming Luan was about to say what he was brewing in his stomach, Wuxiong took the initiative to ask, as the leader of the Merchant Alliance, you rarely come back. Could it be that something big has happened? Something big has indeed happened. This matter might even involve the 2 of us. Deming Luan sighed. Wuxiong stopped and squinted his eyes. Brother Ming Luan, are you joking or trying to scare me? What kind of big matter could involve me? Deming Luan smiled bitterly and shook his head. He immediately told Wu Xiong about Yu Qianzhou's fight with someone in the illusionary immortal city. He emphasized the situation of Yu Qianzhou controlling the myriad swords. So this Yu Qianzhou is very likely a remnant of the myriad swords demon monarch. But what does this have to do with me? Wu Xiong didn't react at first, but his expression changed as if he thought of something. Originally, it had nothing to do with you and me. Deming Luan spread his palms and smiled bitterly. You should know that I was once close friends with Yun Peng and Wei Chuanxiu. But what I don't understand is that these two guys are actually together with Yu Qianzhou. Although these two guys aren't very polite to me now, I can't abandon our friendship and watch them die. That's why I took the risk to come to the Immortal Palace to see the Immortal Emperor. And you? I say, your little wife, Mu Tianjiao, didn't stay at home. She just had to run to the illusionary immortal city to support Yu Qianzhou's World Merchant Association. She caused such a commotion that everyone in the world knows that your family is friends with Yu Qianzhou. I say, aren't you and your wife looking for trouble? She went to the illusionary immortal city with my permission. Wu Xiong's expression didn't look too good. He didn't expect to get into such trouble. He stared at Deming Luan and asked, Brother Ming Luan, how are you going to report this to the immortal emperor? Actually, I've already investigated Yu Qianzhou. I'm very sure that he has no relationship with the myriad swords demon monarch. But he just happens to cultivate a Gui Yuan sword technique that can control the myriad swords demon monarch. Actually, this sword technique doesn't have any power at all. It's just for show. It can't compare to the myriad swords demon monarch's invincible sword technique. Take a look at this. Deming Luan took out the sword technique that Yu Qianzhou had given him. The jade archive that he crushed in front of Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng was actually fake. He had put in some effort to reconcile with his two brothers. In reality, how could he so easily destroy something that he wanted to bring to the immortal emperor as evidence? Chapter 894. Wu Xiong examined the contents of the jade archive. He couldn't make out anything in a short amount of time, but he believed that Deming Luan wouldn't dare to fool the immortal emperor with something fake. He threw the jade archive back to Deming Luan and said with an unfriendly expression, Deming Luan, what do you mean by telling me this? Are you trying to threaten me? What are you thinking? Do you think I'd threaten you? Deming Luan put the jade archive away and sighed, I just want you to be mentally prepared. You might as well postpone your wedding to avoid being implicated. If things go south, you still have to get rid of them when you return. It's just a woman, and there are plenty of women in the world. With our status in the immortal realm, we can get any woman we want. Brother Wu, it's best if you kill her and show the immortal emperor your loyalty. After all, you've only known each other for a short while. This will clear your name. As he spoke, he made a throat-slitting gesture. Wu Xiong's face immediately darkened. He stared at Deming Luan and said in a low voice, Are you saying that I should kill my own woman? Brother Wu, you're being too serious. If she really was your woman, how could I say such a thing? Deming Luan waved his hand and revealed an expression of a man who was decisive. She hasn't married you yet, right? She's still some distance away from becoming your woman. Wu Xiong clenched his fists in his sleeves and narrowed his eyes at Deming Luan, then why aren't you afraid of being implicated? Why are you willing to take the risk to ask the immortal emperor to rid Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng of suspicion? That's a completely different matter. Haven't you heard that brothers are like limbs and women are like clothes? Deming Luan glanced at the sleeves that covered Wu Xiong's fists and said calmly, Women can be changed, but not limbs. Women can be changed, but not limbs. You're indeed a rare man. No wonder the immortal emperor gave you control of such a large merchant alliance. Wu Xiong scoffed, then how are you going to protect them before the immortal emperor? Deming Luan said with a serious expression, I will do my best until my last breath. I will use my life as a guarantee to Immortal Emperor that Yunpeng and Wei Chuanqiu did not know that Yu Qianzhou could control 10,000 swords beforehand. Wu Xiong nodded his head. With his hands behind his back, he slowly circled around the great bright wheel twice. After pondering for a while, he stood face to face with the great bright wheel. He squinted his eyes and said word by word, "Brother Mingluan's words about women being like clothes, forgive me for being unable to agree." De Mingluan was wide-eyed and tongue-tied. Then, he swiftly looked around and waved his hands repeatedly, saying, "Brother Wu is talking nonsense, talking nonsense. If someone else were to hear this, then it would be very troublesome. I dare to say such words because I am not afraid of trouble. My woman can be bullied, humiliated, and not abandoned, but that is only limited to myself, it is not up to others. If I cannot even protect my own woman, then no matter how high my position is, I will only be a coward who will never be able to rise again. How would I have the face to live in this world?" Wu Xiong pointed at De Mingluan and spoke resolutely. Then, he slowly put his head in front of De Mingluan and said, "Neither too fast nor too slow, brother of Mingluan values brotherhood so much, Wu Xiong's heart is comforted, I did not make the wrong friend. You and I have been friends for many years, but why do I feel that in your heart, I am not as good as Wei Chuanqiu and Yunpeng? Could it be that you do not see me as a brother?" De Mingluan was surprised. Why does Brother Wu say this? If we are not brothers, then why would we say such words here? Then why are you willing to risk your life to save Wei Chuanqiu and Yunpeng when they are in trouble, but you want me to abandon my woman when I am in trouble? Is this something brothers should do? Wu Xiong gritted his teeth and said, "Comparing the two, since we are both brothers, why do we need to distinguish which is more important?" De Mingluan's brows immediately furrowed and he said in a deep voice, "I can risk my life to protect the two of them, and I can also protect your woman and help you solve your problem. But the key is that it is not right for me to protect your woman in front of the Immortal Emperor. If I really did that, the Immortal Emperor would suspect you even more, wouldn't that be harming you? Since you have this intention, why do you need to go so far and give up what is close at hand?" Wu Xiong looked around and a smile appeared on his face as he transmitted his voice. "Didn't you say that you have already interrogated Yu Qianzhou and confirmed that he is not related to the demon lord of 10,000 swords? Moreover, you have Yu Qianzhou's cultivation technique as proof." "What do you mean?" De Mingluan asked suspiciously. Wu Xiong transmitted his voice back, "You and I both know the Immortal Emperor's character. If you want to successfully protect Wei Chuanqiu and Yunpeng, I'm afraid it will be very difficult, and even your own life will be in danger. I have a slightly better idea, why don't you try it first? Maybe it can save us from this crisis." De Mingluan's eyes lit up, and he also transmitted his voice back, "Since you have a good idea, why don't you say it quickly?" Wu Xiong transmitted his voice back with a smile, "You first do official business, don't mention the matter of protecting Wei Chuanqiu and Yunpeng, just mention the matter of Yu Qianzhou controlling the demon lord of 10,000 swords, then say that after your detailed investigation, you have already confirmed that Yu Qianzhou is not related to the demon lord of 10,000 swords. And because I came into contact with that Yu Qianzhou when the Divine Ruin Realm opened, I will use this as a reason to interrupt and put in a good word or two for Yu Qianzhou. The Immortal Emperor is not a fool, if we say this, he will naturally understand our selfishness. As long as we don't make things clear, it will not damage his impartial style of doing things, and it will not affect his decisiveness in killing in the future. Plus, we have been loyal to him for so many years, maybe this matter will be left unsettled." In fact, this was exactly what De Mingluan wanted to do. Because he was afraid that one person's weight was not enough, he beat around the bush and pulled Wu Xiong in. Based on his understanding of Wu Xiong's character, he had indeed fallen into his trap. De Mingluan was secretly happy, but his face still showed some worry as he said, "Will this work? Why don't we just make things clear? I will protect Wei Chuanqiu and Yunpeng, you protect your woman, maybe he will let us go on account of our many years of service." He talked back and forth, but he did not mention protecting Yu Qianzhou. In fact, his purpose in coming here was to protect Yu Qianzhou. There was no other way, since Wei Chuanxiu had already said that Yu Qianzhou was very important to him, he could only do his best. In fact, Deming Luan was indeed a person who valued relationships and righteousness, but he also knew that in order to survive in the immortal world, it was unavoidable to use the necessary methods. Although some methods were not suitable for his brothers and friends, it was most important to do his best to protect everyone. He was the type of person who had the ability, methods, schemes, and even ruthlessness. It was because of this ability that Jintai picked him to lead the Chamber of Commerce Alliance. However, he was also the type of person who put in the effort for his brothers and friends without asking for anything in return. Because of this, he felt that the long path of cultivation would not be lonely, and he would not let the merciless years gradually make him cold. This was because he knew better than others that the path of immortality was long. No matter how far one walked, no matter how high one's cultivation was, one would still be lonely. And friends like Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng, who could risk their lives for him at any time, were indispensable. It was really good to have their company along the way. Although they were beasts and he was human, sometimes beasts valued relationships more than humans. If he lost a friend like this, he would not be able to make up for it even if he wanted to, so Deming Luan wanted to do his best to protect them. Because such friends had come all the way, they had gone through all kinds of trials and tribulations. Everyone knew each other very well. It was almost impossible to find such a reassuring friend in the immortal world. There were many people with low cultivations who were willing to make friends with you, maybe because they wanted a backer. Those with equal cultivations were all scheming and deceiving each other. Those with higher cultivations were mostly disdainful of making friends with you. At least there was one thing that Deming Luan believed: if he encountered any trouble, Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng would risk their lives to protect him. They would fight with him while bathing in blood and killing enemies together. They would definitely not leave him until death. Wu Xiong frowned and said, "When have you ever seen him show mercy? He has ruled the immortal world for so many years and has always been ruthless. If he shows mercy to us today, there will be others who will beg him to show mercy in the future. At that time, if he doesn't show mercy, the hearts of the people will be in chaos. How will he rule then? Do we really want him to kill everyone in the immortal world? So we have to give him a reason to show mercy. We can't make it clear. Only then will we have a chance. Taking a step back, he might implicate Yu Qianzhou and the others and let us go. If he still doesn't let us go and wants to kill to the end, then there's no other way. We can only beg him to show mercy. Success or failure, this is the last resort." To be able to reach their status in the immortal world, none of them were simple characters. Their words and actions were all far-sighted. Deming Luan sighed in his heart. Originally, he only wanted to bring Wu Xiong along to beg the immortal emperor because the two of them would have a higher chance of success. In the end, they were both capable subordinates of the immortal emperor. Who knew that Wu Xiong would think further and more meticulously? His method was also more comprehensive. Sigh. This time, he really let Wu Xiong down. Deming Luan nodded solemnly and said, "All right, we'll do as you say." Wu Xiong slowly let out a sigh of relief. The two of them then strode out of the righteous heavenly gate and turned into flowing lights as they flew downwards. At this time, Yu Qianzhou was probably still thinking about how to develop and strengthen his forces at the World Commerce Association, leisurely dreaming his sweet dreams. Little did he know that by casually showing off his skills and causing a ruckus, he had pulled a hair and affected the whole body. He didn't know how many people had been implicated, and all of them were unable to eat or sleep in peace. Some were anxious, some were terrified, and some were trying their best to help him solve the problem. Using the conclusion of Wu Sihai from the four great families, this guy was a jinx. Wherever he went, he would be uneasy. However, what Wu Sihai didn't expect was that Yu Qianzhou had already brought disaster to the immortal world. A large group of people were terrified by his unintentional actions. Chapter 895. On the secondary peak next to the main peak of the Paradise of Bliss, there was a high wall made of green and pleasant jade. The wall was covered with all kinds of flower and bird patterns, and the layers of wavy walls were made of extremely rare pink jade. The pavilions, terraces, and buildings within the high walls were all constructed with various colored jades and jadeites. It was like a colorful crystal palace, exquisite, grand, and extremely gorgeous. A man in a golden robe slowly walked out of the crystal palace and into the four-cornered jade pavilion in the courtyard. He stood there steadily with his hands behind his back. This dignified man with a square face had a complicated hollowed-out golden crown on his head. Two sword-like eyebrows slanted into the left and right corners of his forehead, and the slender eyes under the sword-like eyebrows bloomed with a breathtaking cold light. Under the strong bridge of his nose, the tip of his nose was slightly hooked. His thin lips were tightly closed like two blades, and 3 strands of beard hung on his upper chest. His chiseled face was like 10,000 years of ice. There was not the slightest expression on his face. A superior aura arose spontaneously, making people fearful and not daring to peek at his true face. The golden robe worn by the tall and straight figure was different from the ones worn by ordinary people of the immortal palace. The golden robe that wrapped around his body was bound by a golden belt, and it was covered with a gorgeous and extraordinary wide golden robe. The robe was embroidered with golden threads that were full of coiling dragons and clouds. It was unknown how heavy this robe was. He was also wearing a pair of thick-soled golden boots. He stood there with the aura of a king. The strangest thing was that his body was faintly shrouded in a layer of faint golden glow. The glow was thin and curled up like a morning mist, faintly wandering around his body. Although this person's aura was extraordinary, it made people feel dreamy and illusory at first glance, giving people a feeling of unreality. If one looked at him in reality, it would be frightening, as if his whole person was always in the dreamy light. Following him was the devastatingly beautiful immortal Lord Ji Wu, and the silver-haired Yi Shuijun, who was dressed in a silver robe, stood outside the pavilion with her head slightly bowed. However, he stood there with an expressionless face. In the immortal world, there was someone who could make these two submit to him, so the identity of this golden-robed man was obvious. Not bad. This person was the monarch of the immortal world, the ruler of all living beings in the immortal world, the immortal Emperor Jin Tai. Jin Tai, who had been silent ever since he entered the jadeite courtyard, silently walked around every corner of the building. Ji Wu and Shuijun followed behind him, not daring to breathe loudly. They just quietly accompanied him. Although they did not know why he suddenly came, they did not dare to ask. Because this person was temperamental and took the lives of others to be worthless like ants. He could kill with a single thought, and no one in the entire immortal dimension dared to go against him. Ji Wu, are you satisfied with this place? A loud yet oppressive voice finally came from the person inside the pavilion. Immortal Emperor Jin Tai, who was standing with his hands behind his back, finally spoke. Ji Wu quickly bowed respectfully and said, "Thank you, Immortal Emperor, for your kindness." Ji Wu is very satisfied. However, Ji Wu didn't know how she was able to live under the foot of the Celestial Emperor's palace. She reflected on it day and night, feeling a little fearful. She didn't dare to stay here for long. After repeated consideration, Ji Wu decided to bid farewell to the Immortal Emperor and find another place to stay. Jin Tai slowly turned around, his half-closed eyes flashing with a bright light. He stared at Ji Wu for a while and said, "Since you're very satisfied, why look for another place to stay? This place was built for you. Just stay here." Ji Wu wanted to continue to decline, but Jin Tai's eyes flashed coldly. He stared at the thatched cottage on the side and asked, Shuijun, "Did you build this thatched cottage?" As soon as this was said, Ji Wu could not say the words that were on the tip of her tongue. She was a little nervous, afraid that Jin Tai would attack Shuijun again. Shuijun cupped his fists expressionlessly and said, "Yes." His tone was stiff, without the slightest respect. Jean Tai stared at him coldly. There was no abnormality, but there was a terrifying invisible pressure that forced Xiaofan to take a few steps back on the spot. In the blink of an eye, blood seeped out of the corner of Xiaofan's mouth, but he still spoke in a stiff tone, "Immortal Emperor, what did I do wrong to provoke Immortal Emperor's anger?" His white teeth were dyed red with blood, and his body began to shake. Ji Wu was shocked. She stood between the two of them under the invisible pressure. She bowed to Jean Tai and said, "Immortal Emperor, please calm down. Ji Wu asked Brother Yi to build this hut. It really has nothing to do with him. If Immortal Emperor wants to blame someone, please blame Ji Wu." The invisible terrifying pressure disappeared silently in an instant. Xiaofan stabilized his body and bit his bloody lips without saying a word. Jean Tai's gaze fell on Ji Wu. "Since you pleaded for him, I will spare him once more. But Ji Wu, although I don't want to force you, my patience is limited. Think about it carefully. Within a month, I hope you can take the initiative to come to the Immortal Palace to find me. Don't let me come again." Ji Wu's face instantly turned pale. Jean Tai's so-called "that matter" was for her to agree to become his celestial empress. The time limit he gave this time was undoubtedly a final warning. At this moment, two people suddenly shouted outside the green wall, "Wuxia and Deming Luan are seeking an audience with Immortal Emperor." Jean Tai's eyes were slightly cold as he said, "Come in." Wuxia and Deming Luan's figures immediately appeared outside the door. They quickly walked to the pavilion and saluted together, "Greetings Immortal Emperor." "What is it?" Jean Tai stared at the two and asked. The two looked at each other and knew that Jean Tai did not like to be long-winded. Wuxia stepped forward and took the lead to report, "I will be getting married soon. I especially came to ask for leave from Immortal Emperor. I hope Immortal Emperor will grant me this." "Granted." Jean Tai said expressionlessly, "Commander Wu has worked hard and contributed greatly. On the day of your wedding, I will reward you handsomely." "Thank you, Immortal Emperor." Wuxia retreated. Deming Luan stepped forward at the right time and saluted. He told them about the fight between Yu Qianzhou and the others and how he controlled 10,000 swords. When they heard this, Snow Lord and Ji Wu's eyes could not help but move, but they did not dare to change too much. They did not expect Yu Qianzhou to kill two late exalted immortal cultivators as a soul formation cultivator. However, what shocked the two of them the most was that Yu Qianzhou was actually able to control 10,000 swords. The two of them naturally knew what this meant. It should be known that the two of them had personally fought against the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch back then. Jean Tai's fear of the Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords was not something that could be explained in a few words. Both of them knew that Yu Qianzhou was in big trouble this time. They could not help but quietly observe the changes in Jean Tai's expression. After this incident, I immediately suspected that Yu Qianzhou was related to the Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords, so I immediately found Yu Qianzhou to investigate in detail. In the end, I found that he had nothing to do with the Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords. It was only because he cultivated a sword technique that only looked impressive. Although he could control 10,000 swords, its power was ordinary. Deming Luan said as he presented a jade archive with both hands. "This is the sword technique of Guiyuan that Yu Qianzhou cultivated. I have also brought it with me. Please have a look, Immortal Emperor." When Jean Tai heard the name Demon Lord of 10,000 Swords, his eyes immediately lit up, as if they were about to shoot out. He muttered, "Sword technique of Guiyuan." He opened his palm, and the jade archive immediately appeared in his hand. His eyes opened and closed, and the light in his eyes flickered. It was obvious that he was examining the contents inside. The people outside the pavilion held their breaths and waited quietly. After waiting for a long time, Jean Tai still did not make a move. They were shocked. This was the first time they had seen Jean Tai pay so much attention to an item. It was obvious that he was very wary of the demon lord of 10,000 swords, who had died many years ago. After a long time, Jin Tai snorted coldly. It looks like it, but it's not. It's just something that looks impressive. However, the person who wrote this sword technique is not simple. The art of soul splitting and manipulation is extraordinary. The person who wrote this seems to be deliberately hiding something. Now, I really suspect that this sword technique has something to do with the demon lord of 10,000 swords. When he said this, the 4 people below turned pale with fright. They thought, could it be that Yu Qianzhou was really related to the demon lord of 10,000 swords? This was a little too inconceivable. The countermeasure that Wuxiong and Great Bright Will had previously discussed could not be said. Jin Tai swept a glance at the 4 people, thinking that they had been frightened by the demon lord of 10,000 swords. He snorted coldly and said, "Don't be afraid. I personally killed the demon lord of 10,000 swords. I saw his body and spirit destroyed with my own eyes. What's there to be afraid of about someone who can't be more dead?" His gaze turned to the dazed Great Bright Wheel and he asked in a deep voice, "Since you suspect that he is related to the demon lord of 10,000 swords, why didn't you deal with it earlier? Do you really need me to teach you about this?" Great Bright Will didn't get the chance to explain. Wuxiong took another step forward and answered first, reporting to the immortal emperor. "This matter is all my fault. I was the one who asked Great Bright Will to delay his actions. This matter has something to do with you." Jin Tai's eyes flashed with a cold light. Great Bright Will was anxious. He lowered his head and didn't say a word. He didn't know how Wuxiong would deal with this. Wuxiong hurriedly explained, "Because I accidentally came into contact with Yu Qianzhou during the meeting in the Divine Ruins realm. At that time, I learned from him that he had picked up a jade archive in the Divine Ruins realm, which recorded this Guiyuan sword technique. At that time, he wanted to flatter me and wanted to give this jade archive to me. At that time, I thought that it was something left behind by the disciples of the various sects in the Divine Ruins realm. I thought that the disciples sent out by the various sects were only at the demigod stage. What good things could they have left behind? I didn't take a fancy to it at that time, so I didn't take it from him. Instead, I accepted an immortal herb worth 60 billion divine grade spirit stones. I am guilty, and I am willing to accept the immortal emperor's punishment." Great Bright Will sighed slightly in his heart when he heard this. In order to protect his woman, this Wuxiong actually didn't hesitate to make up lies and dirty lies. "Oh. I didn't think that the external affairs great commander of my immortal palace would also learn to accept bribes." Jin Tai said indifferently, then raised the jade archive in his hand. A strange light flashed in his eyes as he said, "In that case, this jade archive actually came from the Divine Ruins realm. Wuxiong, are you sure you didn't make a mistake?" Chapter 896. This official can confirm that this Guiyuan sword art was picked up by Yu Qianzhou from the Divine Ruin realm. Wuxiong replied respectfully. He was worried that there was something wrong with the jade archive in Jin Tai's hand, hence he confirmed that the sword art came from the Divine Ruin realm, but did not mention that the jade archive came from the Divine Ruin realm. From the Divine Ruin realm? Jin Tai muttered under his breath as he looked at the jade archive in his hand. No one knew what he was thinking about, but he seemed to be confused. Everyone held their breath as they waited for a while. When Jin Tai regained his senses, he glared coldly at Wuxiong. "A mere 60 billion divine grade spirit stones worth of immortal herbs can bribe the two of you to plead for mercy? It seems like even if this Yu Qianzhou has no connection with the 10,000 sword sect, his ability is not small. Although his tone was neither too fast nor too slow, the complexions of the Great Bright Wheel and Wuxiong changed. They knew that Jin Tai was already very unhappy about this matter. They were afraid that no one would be able to persuade him. Yu Qianzhou's little life was certainly going to be lost. Now, they would have to see if Jin Tai wanted to escalate this matter. Both of them had already prepared themselves to take a step back. It was no longer important whether they could protect Yu Qianzhou at this critical moment. After all, Yu Qianzhou had nothing to do with them. The most important thing was to protect their own people. Ji Wu pursed her lips, hesitating for a moment before asking, Yu Qianzhou? The one who left those words on the waterfall, Yu Qianzhou? Everyone turned to look at Jin Tai at the same time. A trace of surprise flashed across Jin Tai's eyes as he asked, could it be that immortal monarch Ji Wu knows Yu Qianzhou? Immortal crocodile monarch looked at Ji Wu nervously, but Ji Wu took a step forward, replying respectfully, Ji Wu does not know this Yu Qianzhou. I only heard that this person left some words on the waterfall, and created some very beautiful things that attracted people from the immortal world. She turned to look at the Great Bright Wheel. Great Bright Wheel is in charge of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance, and has lived in the hallucinatory immortal city for a long time. I wonder if she's really as beautiful as the rumors say. Deming Luan was slightly startled, then he cupped his fists and said, replying immortal monarch, it is true. This should be his way of doing business and attracting people. For this, he even specially built the tallest building in the celestial world, which is 23 stories high. It is indeed quite unique. Ji Wu faintly smiled and said, this Yu Qianzhou is also a wonderful person. He actually thought of such a method to attract people. If there's a chance, I'll have to pay a visit to his World Chamber of Commerce. If that World Chamber of Commerce is really as beautiful as the rumors say, I would like to invite them to help me design and build a beautiful residence in the future. Deming Luan and Wu Xiong looked at each other speechlessly. Then, they quietly looked at Jin Tai. Jin Tai glanced coldly at the Crystal Palace, then looked at Ji Wu and asked, Immortal Lord Ji Wu, are you not satisfied with this residence? I wouldn't dare. Ji Wu bowed and said, the Celestial Emperor personally gave me a place to stay. Ji Wu is only grateful and doesn't dare to be dissatisfied. Although she spoke respectfully, everyone could hear that Ji Wu was clearly dissatisfied with this residence but didn't dare to say it out of consideration for the Celestial Emperor's face. Jin Tai frowned and said, if you don't like it, then build one that you like. He then tilted his head and said, Wu Xiong, summon that Yu Qianzhou and tell him to build a satisfactory residence for Immortal Lord Ji Wu. Tell him that if he does well, I will reward him. Wu Xiong was overjoyed. Since Jin Tai said this, it meant that he wouldn't pursue the matter of Yu Qianzhou anymore. Then all the danger was resolved. Wu Xiong was about to accept the order when Ji Wu shouted, wait. They looked over and saw Ji Wu bow and say, Ji Wu appreciates the Celestial Emperor's kindness. However, this Yu Qianzhou might be related to the demon monarch of myriad swords. How can Ji Wu do something that will make the Celestial Emperor unhappy just because of my own small preferences? Great Bright Wheel and Wu Xiong were secretly overjoyed, but when they heard this, their hearts dropped again. Jin Tai paused and stared at Wu Xiong and Great Bright Wheel and said, you two have really investigated whether this Yu Qianzhou is related to myriad swords? Yes, we don't dare to lie. Great Bright Wheel and Wu Xiong replied in unison. The two of them had thrown caution to the wind this time. Although they said they didn't dare, in reality, they were lying. Jin Tai nodded slightly and said, Ji Wu, since they have already investigated, it means that Yu Qianzhou indeed has nothing to do with Wang Jian. Recruiting him to build you a residence that you like can't be considered as abandoning the public for personal reasons. Moreover, a person who has been dead for a long time is not enough for us to go to war. These words were equivalent to confirming the matter. Great Bright Wheel and Wu Xiong immediately sighed in relief, knowing that the danger had passed. This. Ji Wu pondered for a moment and said, let's wait until I have the chance to go to the World Commerce Association to take a look. If it really is to my liking, it won't be too late to summon him. If it is not to my liking, why would I ask him to come? Jin Tai did not speak when he heard this. The reason why he put Ji Wu under house arrest here was to make Ji Wu agree to be his immortal empress without being forced. After all, no one wanted their wife to be forced, let alone the dignified immortal empress from the immortal world. He had just set a deadline of 1 month. After a month, if Ji Wu still did not agree, then he would use force. Therefore, he would not let Ji Wu go for at least this month unless Ji Wu agreed in advance. Since you have made up your mind, then I won't force you. Let's wait until you see it in the future. Jin Tai pushed the boat with the current and said to Wu Xiong and Great Bright Wheel, if there is nothing else, go do your own things. After that, the golden glow flashed in the jadeite pavilion and disappeared. As soon as Jin Tai left, the invisible pressure that enveloped the entire courtyard disappeared. But at this moment, Yu Xuejun suddenly staggered and spat out a large mouthful of blood. Fresh blood sprayed onto the pillars of the jadeite pavilion and slid down bit by bit. It was a ghastly sight. Brother Yu. What happened to you? Ji Wu exclaimed and quickly supported him. Of course, it is Jin Tai's doing. Yu Xuejun gritted his teeth and waved his hand, it's nothing. I have been holding it in. I feel better after spitting it out. He took out an immortal pill and swallowed it. Ji Wu looked at Great Bright Wheel and Wu Xiong awkwardly. She did not know if they would report Yu Xuejun scolding Jin Tai in front of them. Great Bright Wheel and Wu Xiong looked at each other, feeling a little emotional. Back then, one of the 12 great immortal monarchs was one of the top figures in the immortal world. Both of them had to be respectful when they saw him. Now, he had fallen into such a situation. The world was fickle, and fate was unpredictable. In fact, Ji Wu was thinking too much. The two were not fools. They both knew that Ji Wu and Yu Xuejun had a close relationship. If they reported Yu Xuejun to the immortal emperor, wouldn't they be looking for trouble in the future? Everyone knew that the weak could not win against the strong. Sooner or later, Ji Wu would become the immortal empress. If they offended the immortal empress, they would not want to live in the future. To put it bluntly, even if Ji Wu killed the two of them now, their deaths would be in vain. The immortal emperor would not do anything to Ji Wu. The two naturally pretended not to see or hear anything. They cupped their hands at Ji Wu and said, "Farewell, immortal monarch." Ji Wu held Yu Xuejun's arm with one hand and raised the other slightly, saying, "Goodbye." Great Bright Wheel and Wu Xiong cupped their hands at Yu Xuejun again, then quickly turned and walked out, turning into two streams of light outside the courtyard. Brother Yu. Why do you have to do this? Ji Wu held Yu Xuejun's arm and helped him into the pavilion. She set up a soundproof enchantment, shook her head and sighed, you know it's not good to go against him. Why do you want to suffer? It's not that I want to criticize you, but you are too unwise. Yu Xuejun pushed her arm away, lifted his legs on the table in the pavilion, sat cross-legged, and said, I want to bear with it, but when I see him, I can't take it. He waved his hand and said, forget it, let's not talk about me. He just gave you a month's time limit. It seems that he has lost his patience. What are you going to do after a month? Ji Wu shook her head and smiled bitterly, what to do? What can I do? Who in the immortal realm disobeys his will? I'll take it one step at a time. Yu Xuejun raised his hand and wiped the blood on his mouth. He looked at the bright red in his palm and frowned, actually, I have two immature ideas, but the two of us are trapped here. It's very difficult to implement them. Ji Wu's eyes lit up, and said, Brother Yu, why don't you tell me? Yu Xuejun thought for a while and shook his head slowly, it's just a flash of inspiration. It's almost impossible to implement. Say it. Ji Wu said with a pleading tone, tell me, let me hear it. Yu Xuejun put his hands on his knees, paused, and said, last time, when Silver Armor 1,000 soldiers sent us back to the immortal realm in the underworld, he said that if you need any help, you can look for him. He will do his best. 1,000 soldiers is the emperor of the underworld's most trusted person. If you can send someone to contact 1,000 soldiers and ask the emperor of the underworld to look for the immortal emperor, you may have a chance because of the Emperor of the Underworld. The Emperor of the Underworld will look for the immortal Emperor for me? Ji Wu was stunned for a while, and then smiled bitterly. This is impossible. Even if 1,000 soldiers can really ask the Emperor of the Underworld for help, the immortal Emperor and the Emperor of the Underworld have never been on good terms. Not to mention this kind of thing, the Emperor of the Underworld will not give in. Moreover, who can contact 1,000 soldiers? 1,000 soldiers lives high in the Emperor of the Underworld. Even if an ordinary person goes to the Underworld, I'm afraid it will be difficult to see him. Moreover, we are under house arrest here, and there is no way to contact suitable and reliable people to go to the Underworld. If this method doesn't work, what's the other way? I said I just thought of it by chance. It's not feasible. As for the second method, it's even more impossible. Yu Shuijun smiled. At this time, there was no psychological burden. He said casually, at present, apart from the Emperor of the Underworld, there is another person who may help you. That person is Yu Qianzhou's master, Bai Changchun. Although Bai Changchun was defeated by the Emperor of the Underworld, with his ability to fight against 4 underworld generals alone, I dare say that in the immortal realm and the Emperor of the Underworld, no one is his match. The most terrifying thing about this person is that no matter what kind of expert he meets, he gets stronger the more he fights. I have seen this person's ability. I am afraid he will not die so easily. Maybe his cultivation is even stronger now. Chapter 897. Ji Wu's expression froze. She had fought with Bai Changchun twice. When it came to Bai Changchun's ability, she knew it better than Yi Shuijun. He was an extraordinary existence, and the more he fought, the stronger he became. She clearly remembered that when they first fought, Bai Changchun was still no match for her and Yi Xiao. But when he appeared again not long after, that terrifying scene was still fresh in her memory. Yi Shuijun saw that she was silent and lowered his voice. If Bai Changchun is not dead, I believe that he is the one who is qualified to fight against Qintaichi. Because I don't think Jin Tai is necessarily the opponent of Emperor of the Underworld. Since Bai Changchun can fight with Emperor of the Underworld, he can naturally fight with Jin Tai. If Yu Qianzhou can contact him and ask him to deal with Jin Tai, even if he is not Jin Tai's opponent, at least he can make Jin Tai forget about you for a short time. If he can kill Jin Tai, it will be better. But he was seriously injured by Emperor of the Underworld and fled into the boundless dark land. Now I don't know if he is dead or alive. Even if he is still alive, can Yu Qianzhou find him? Even if he can find him, why would Yu Qianzhou let his master take such a big risk? Brother Yi, think about it. If Bai Changchun comes here to challenge Jin Tai, Emperor of the Underworld will come to take revenge. At that time, Bai Changchun will not only face Jin Tai. Ji Wu bitterly smiled and said, besides, it's not good to tell him this through someone else. We're under house arrest here, so there's no way for us to meet him. If someone else told him this, do you think he would believe it? Most importantly, he doesn't need to help me like this. I said it is an immature method. If you say that he doesn't need to help, then you are overthinking. You have saved his life just now. Shouldn't he be grateful? Ji Wu shook her head and said, but he saved me before. If he didn't save me before, I don't need to save him this time. An eye for an eye, no one owes anyone anything, so we cancel each other out. It's a pity that you and I don't have a chance to go to the illusory immortal city. Otherwise, would have to ask him to contact his master, Snow Lord replied casually. But in his heart, he was thinking that if he could really meet Yu Qianzhou, he could ask Yu Qianzhou for help. If Yu Qianzhou dared to refuse, he could threaten him with the fact that he touched Ji Wu's butt. Yu Qianzhou had to consider whether Jin Tai would skin him alive if he touched Jin Tai's wife's butt. As soon as the 2 streaks of light flew out of the Paradise Immortal Realm's mountain range, they immediately slowed down. Wu Xiong and Deming Luan looked at each other with lingering fear in their hearts. Even now, they still didn't dare to believe that they had passed the test just like that. Our luck is good. I didn't expect Dancing G Immortal Monarch to stand up for me at such a critical moment. Wuxiong shook his head in disbelief. Luck, I'm so lucky. If it wasn't for Immortal Lord Wu Ji, I really can't think of anyone else in the immortal world who could change the Immortal Emperor's attitude. It's not just our luck, it's also Yu Qianzhou's luck. I didn't expect those strange things he came up with to save his life at such a critical moment. It's not just good luck, it's simply good fate. De Mingluan recalled the incident and could not help but sigh. It's good that the crisis is over. Wuxiong cupped his hands as he flew and said, Brother Mingluan, I still have some matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave now. De Mingluan also cupped his hands in farewell, and the two immediately sped up in two different directions. The two of them sighed, but they didn't know that Ji Wu's words were not because of their or Yu Qianzhou's good luck. Other than Shuijun, no one knew that Yu Qianzhou and Ji Wu had known each other for a long time. Because of this relationship, it was the key to surviving this crisis. But then again, if Bai Chongqun hadn't shown mercy to Ji Wu in the Holy East Land, then Ji Wu wouldn't have helped him today. But if Ji Wu had been killed by Bai Chongqun, Shuijun would not have been able to return to the celestial realm with Ji Wu. If Shuijun did not return to the celestial realm with the small silver ball that Yu Qianzhou gave him, then Yu Qianzhou would still be in the human world as Duguqiubai, and would not come to the celestial realm. Therefore, some things were predestined, and they could only develop step by step. The World Chamber of Commerce's business had begun to get on the right track, and hundreds of feudal lords were gradually getting into the swing of things. After careful consideration, Yu Qianzhou understood that his first plan in the celestial realm had succeeded. With the World Chamber of Commerce as a pretense for doing business, the next step could be justifiably to cooperate with Skyward Palace. As long as he obtained the various immortal pills he needed, it would not take long for a large number of immortal realm experts to appear in his hands. Just think about it. If the feudal lords, the army of Utopia, and the hundreds of thousands of cultivators in the human world all reached the immortal realm, it would be a terrifying thing. The more experts there were, the stronger he would be, and many things would be easier to do. As long as the overall strength of the World Chamber of Commerce increased, his next step would be to find a way to enter the netherworld. He could not let Bai Chongqun's life and death be unknown. Until now, he still tried to contact Bai Chongqun every day, but there was no news. This made him very anxious, but he understood that some things were useless to be anxious. He could only take it step by step. However, if he wanted to walk in the netherworld, he would not be able to do so without enough manpower and strength. Now that he knew a lot, the netherworld was too vast, many times larger than the celestial realm. There was also the endless land of darkness, which few people set foot in. For this reason, Yu Qianzhou had already thought about it. As long as he could find out whether Bai Chongqun was dead or alive, he would not hesitate to throw hundreds of thousands of immortal realm cultivators into the netherworld. I don't care how vast the netherworld is. As long as there are ghosts, there will be my people. I don't believe that I can't find any clues. This was what Yu Qianzhou thought. For this day to come, Yu Qianzhou could be said to have put in a lot of effort. However, things were somewhat unpredictable. He had arranged for Shui Mingqing to contact Skyward Palace about purchasing immortal pills, but who knew that there would be no news at all? For this reason, Yu Qianzhou even personally went to Skyward Palace's branch. In the end, the disciples of Skyward Palace's branch told him that the elders in charge had left to attend to something. Yu Qianzhou immediately felt that it was strange. Shui Mingqing was too heartless. He did not even think of a way to send a message before leaving. So he tried to find Du Feng, Hui Yunlong, and the others. In the end, the answers he got were similar. This made him suspect that these people were deliberately hiding from him. It was not until he met Wan Ling, who took the initiative to visit him and build a good relationship with him, that his guess was confirmed from her mouth. This group of people was indeed deliberately hiding from him. After asking for the reason, Yu Qianzhou was suddenly speechless. It turned out that these people were also frightened by the scene of him controlling the 10,000 swords. They all suspected that he was related to the 10,000 swords Demon King. They were afraid that when the Immortal Palace took action, they would implicate him, so they deliberately distanced themselves from him. In fact, Yu Qianzhou himself did not pay much attention to this matter in the beginning. After all, he had already passed this hurdle in front of the Great Bright Wheel. But now that this group of people had messed with him, he also became nervous. Thinking about it, it made sense. The Great Bright Wheel was the Great Bright Wheel. It definitely did not represent the attitude of immortal Emperor Jin Tai. The latter was the master who held the power of life and death. On the rooftop of the World Commerce Association, there was a long rattan chair that could seat 3 people. However, there was only a man and a woman sitting side by side in the sun, looking a bit like a couple. Yu Qianzhou was worried, but on the surface, he lazily said, "Thank you for telling me this, but they are all afraid of being implicated by me." "Are you not afraid?" Wan Ling tilted her head to look at him and chuckled. "Others may not know your background, but do you think I don't know? Do you think I need to be afraid?" Yu Qianzhou was startled. Think about it, the other party thought of him as a trusted secret agent of the Immortal Emperor. Why would he be afraid? Speechless, he tilted his head to look at the smiling Wan Ling. She was quite pretty. No matter how he looked at her, she did not look like such a pervert. He couldn't help but ask, "Wan Ling, I heard that you like to steal other people's husbands. Is that true?" Wan Ling's smile abruptly stopped. Her expression slightly darkened. If someone else said this in front of her, she would have already exploded. However, the person in front of her was Yu Qianzhou. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of the two of them. The newcomer was wearing a golden robe and was thin. Who else could it be but Deming Luan? The two of them quickly stood up and bowed. Deming Luan seemed to be a bit surprised that Wan Ling would be alone with Yu Qianzhou. He then directly asked Yu Qianzhou, "Where is Wu Xiong's wife?" "Oh. She left early in the morning." Yu Qianzhou was a bit apprehensive as he asked, "Why did executive come here?" Deming Luan looked at Wan Ling and didn't say anything. It seemed that it was not very convenient with an outsider around. Yu Qianzhou understood and immediately smiled at Wan Ling. "I have some things to do here, so I won't keep you for long. Come and play often when you have time." Wan Ling nodded and bowed to Deming Luan before flying away from the rooftop. Before she left, she couldn't help but look deeply at the two of them. From the way the two of them talked, she could tell that the relationship between the two of them was not ordinary. Especially when the two of them looked like they wanted to whisper something. Why was there a need for the dignified executive of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance to be like this with a small World Commerce Chamber's sect leader? From this, Wan Ling was even more certain that Yu Qianzhou was a secret agent of the Immortal Emperor. At the same time, she was even more certain that nothing would happen to Yu Qianzhou. Deming Luan looked around the rooftop and asked, "Where is Wei Chuanxiu and Yun Peng?" Yu Qianzhou shook his head and sighed, "AI. Don't mention Wei Chuanxiu anymore. I don't know what happened to him, but he seemed to have lost his soul these 2 days. He was crying and talking about his already dead daughter, Xiao Yuer." Deming Luan immediately knew what was going on. He had personally given that bat jade pendant to Wei Chuanxiu, so he had already expected it. He immediately frowned and said, "Where are they? Bring me to find them. Please follow me." Yu Qianzhou led Deming Luan down the rooftop. After entering the interior of the 22nd floor, Deming Luan was also attracted by the clean, bright and simple style. He couldn't help but look around a few more times. The two of them came to a large door at the end of the corridor. Yu Qianzhou pushed open the door and pointed inside. Chapter 898. This was a large room. There were 2 rooms on the top floor. There were no furnishings inside, only a few rattan chairs. The room was very quiet. Yunpeng silently stood by the window and looked outside. Wei Chuanxiu had finally stopped crying. He was paralyzed on a rattan chair with a dazed expression. The door was pushed open, causing Yunpeng to turn his head. Wei Chuanxiu was still lying there, unmoved. Seeing the 2 walk in, Yunpeng stared at the great bright wheel and said lightly, "You shouldn't have given him this jade pendant." The great bright wheel looked at Wei Chuanxiu, who was holding the bat pendant in a daze, and said disapprovingly, "Let him be like this, it'll be fine once the sadness passes." How did it go? Yunpeng's gaze turned to Yu Qianzhou and said, "What does immortal Emperor Jin Tai plan to do to him?" Yu Qianzhou's heart clenched when he heard this. This was also the result he wanted to know. Perhaps she was stimulated by the words, "Immortal Emperor Jin Tai." Wei Chuanxiu, who was paralyzed on the rattan chair, made a goo-goo sound in her throat. Her pair of lifeless eyes that were immersed in the past gradually became lively. The 3 looked at him at the same time. Wei Chuanxiu looked at the great bright wheel, then stared at the bat pendant in his hand for a while, and then carefully put it away. "You're back from the immortal palace?" Wei Chuanxiu struggled to stand as if he had just recovered from a serious illness. The others saw that he was speaking normally again and didn't say anything. They didn't want to bring up his sad past again. The great bright wheel nodded slightly and said, "This time, it was a fluke. At least it passed unscathed. The immortal emperor has already made his stance clear, he won't pursue this matter anymore." Yu Qianzhou's tense nerves immediately relaxed. He smiled at the 3 people who were looking at him in a simple and honest manner. Wei Chuanxiu tilted his head to look at the great bright wheel and said, "When did Jin Tai become so easy to talk to? You must have put in a lot of effort. Otherwise, with Jin Tai Ning's habit of not letting the wrong person go, this guy would probably be in trouble." "I did put in some effort, but it was useless." Deming Luan stared at Yu Qianzhou and said, "Actually, the one who played the decisive role was someone else. This brat's fortune was really good." At the crucial moment, immortal monarch Ji Wu suddenly spoke up for him. This was why the immortal emperor changed his mind. It was so close. Immortal monarch dancing Ji? The 3 of them exclaimed in unison. Wei Chuanxiu asked curiously, why would immortal monarch Wu Ji speak up for him? Deming Luan immediately explained what had happened. Only then did the few of them understand what had happened. Wei Chuanxiu immediately clicked his tongue and said, "It seems that you are really lucky. The words on the waterfall and this tall building actually saved your life. It seems that the money spent on building this tall building is worth it." "Luck, luck." Yu Qianzhou laughed along. His eyes flickered with uncertainty. In fact, he knew better than anyone else. Immortal monarch Ji Wu definitely did not speak up for him because she wanted him to help build a residence. There could not be such a coincidence. The real reason was because they were acquaintances. This time, immortal monarch Ji Wu had returned the favor of saving his life. He could not tell that this woman was quite a loyal person. "Well, this matter is over. It's time for me to return to the Chamber of Commerce Alliance." Deming Luan glanced at them, turned into a stream of light, and directly flew out of the open window. Obviously, he came here to say hello and reassure everyone. He did not even give Yu Qianzhou a chance to say a few words of gratitude. Only the 3 of them were left in the room. A troublesome matter that worried all 3 of them had been resolved. The 3 of them immediately relaxed. Yunpeng looked up and down at Wei Chuanxiu. Then, without saying a word, he walked out in a snow-white robe with firm steps. Wei Chuanxiu and Yu Qianzhou looked at each other. They both knew that Yunpeng was not used to being confined in the room. He liked the high sky and wide clouds. They were afraid that he would have to go to the rooftop again. As for Yunpeng's habit, Yu Qianzhou raised both his hands in approval. This habit was too good. There was an early-stage immortal emperor expert guarding the rooftop of the World Chamber of Commerce every day. That was an invisible pressure that was enough to deter thieves. Ordinary people really did not dare to trespass the World Chamber of Commerce. Feeling relieved, Yu Qianzhou slowly walked to the window where Yunpeng was standing. He looked outside and pondered. Originally, he was worried that the people from Heaven Palace were avoiding him. Now, there was no need for that. After a period of time, those people who were watching nervously would definitely take the initiative to pay a visit when they saw that the World Chamber of Commerce was safe and sound. Then he would wait for a while. If he appeared to be too anxious, he would be at a disadvantage in bargaining. He would take the opportunity to settle other matters, Bat King Wei. Do you still remember what you promised me in your nest? Yu Qianzhou looked out the window and said. What? Wei Chuanxiu immediately became nervous. He had already faintly guessed what Yu Qianzhou was going to say. He patted his chest and coughed. I'm too sad. I'm not feeling well. Let's talk about it later. However, how could this kind of small trick fool an experienced hooligan like Yu Qianzhou? Yu Qianzhou suddenly turned around and stared at him. He said resolutely and decisively, the disciple that I introduced to you, she is already on her way. Wei Chuanxiu's expression twitched and froze on the spot. As expected. Yu Qianzhou had already informed him in advance. He did not want to say anything more. He strode out of the room, leaving Wei Chuanxiu alone in the room in a daze. The entire 22nd floor was under Yu Qianzhou's sole control. Of course, if Wei Chuanxiu and Yunpeng wanted a room on this floor, he would not say anything. Yu Qianzhou, who had returned to his room, was very conflicted. There was no other reason than that he had not visited Furong, Wu Lixue, and the others for a long time. He had wanted to take this opportunity to go and comfort them one by one. However, now that he had met them, it would be inexcusable if he did not accompany them. After meeting them, going to bed, chatting, and then immediately leaving? He really could not stand the grief in their eyes when they parted. However, world commerce had only been established not long ago. Trouble could come knocking at their door at any time. He could not abandon world commerce to accompany women all day. Hugging a beauty in one hand and wielding a sword to conquer the world with the other was a good idea. He had heard of such a cool thing, but who would dare to do such a thing? They would definitely die a quick death. Moreover, he was still carefully working hard. How could he have the qualifications to act cool? He could only make them wait. He would bring them back after he had established himself. Yu Qianzhou comforted himself and disappeared from his room. When he reappeared, he had already returned to Bai Suzhen's room in Ethereal Palace in Utopia. However, he realized that Bai Suzhen was not in the room. He closed his eyes and used his divine sense to search the entire Utopia. At that moment, Bai Suzhen was in the immortal herb plantation. As Yu Qianzhou had instructed her and Chu Ping, to keep an eye on the immortal herb plantation, she had spent most of her time here recently. Bai Suzhen, who was walking in the immortal herb garden to check on the growth of the immortal herbs, suddenly stopped. Yu Qianzhou's voice rang in her ears, asking her to return to her room. A peaceful smile appeared on Bai Suzhen's face. In a flash, she flew towards Ethereal Palace. As Yu Qianzhou's cultivation was no longer what it used to be, the entire area of Utopia had become very wide. Mountains and rivers had appeared one after another. Because of this, the purple chaos was getting further and further away from Ethereal Palace. In order to make better use of the purple chaos to plant immortal herbs, the immortal herb garden was set far away from Ethereal Palace. After half a day, Bai Suzhen returned to her room. As soon as she entered the room, she saw Yu Qianzhou lying on her couch and looking at her with a smile. A gentle smile appeared on Bai Suzhen's face. She walked to the couch and sat down. She looked at him and asked, "You've been waiting for a long time, right?" Actually, Yu Qianzhou didn't wait for long. Seeing that Bai Suzhen wouldn't be back for a while, he was afraid that something would happen during this half a day. Thus, he returned to the World Commerce Association to oversee things. He only silently watched Bai Suzhen fly back. When Bai Suzhen was about to arrive, he returned to her room. Yu Qianzhou didn't reply to her. He changed his position on the couch and rested his head on Bai Suzhen's thigh. Bai Suzhen also adjusted her position and tried to make him as comfortable as possible. She stroked his hair and asked, "Did you summon me back for something?" Smelling Bai Suzhen's body fragrance, Yu Qianzhou, who was calming and relaxing, couldn't help but smile wryly when he heard this. "When can I always lie down like this and not care about anything? Then, I can have my clothes stretched out and food served, and there's even a beautiful woman to accompany me." As he spoke, he reached out and stroked Bai Suzhen's tranquil and smiling face. "I'm sorry. This time, I might have to break your peaceful life." Bai Suzhen grabbed his hand that was stroking her face and looked down at Yu Qianzhou, who was lying on her lap. She smiled faintly and said, "As long as you are well, this is my peaceful life. Do you need me to do anything? I know you don't have any interest in cultivation anymore, but I found you a master without your consent. I hope you won't be angry." Yu Qianzhou looked into Bai Suzhen's eyes and said, "If you really don't want to, then forget it." He had already decided that if Bai Suzhen didn't want to, he definitely wouldn't force her. When the time comes, he would consider letting Lady Mu go. "You found me a master?" Bai Suzhen was startled. Yu Qianzhou immediately climbed up and explained excitedly, "I found him from the immortal realm. Your master is not ordinary." He explained how he met Wei Chuanxiu and emphasized the origin of the 10,000 Demons Heart Sutra in Wei Chuanxiu's hands. He told her that he hoped she could cultivate the 10,000 Demons Heart Sutra. Hearing this, Bai Suzhen was very surprised. She didn't expect there to be such a powerful person like the ancestor of 10,000 demons, Tai Shuzheng, in the demon race. Imagine how powerful the cultivation treasure left behind by a person who could be compared to the devil god would be. However, she was only surprised. Bai Suzhen didn't seem to have much interest in this. She frowned and thought for a while, then slowly nodded and said, "I'm willing. I hope I can help you after I've cultivated it." Chapter 899. Yes, yes, yes. When you have successfully cultivated the Myriad Demon Heart Sutra, you will be of great help to me. Yu Qianzhou nodded repeatedly and reached out to pull her, saying, "Come with me." Actually, to him, whether or not he wanted Bai Suzhen's help was another matter. The key was that he hoped that Bai Suzhen's own cultivation would be higher and stronger. The affairs of the world were unpredictable and no one knew what would happen in the future. If she encountered any danger, she would be able to protect herself. Secondly, it was too worrying to let someone else cultivate a treasure like the Myriad Demon Heart Sutra. If Bai Suzhen cultivated it, he would be at ease and feel that it was no different from cultivating it himself. Bai Suzhen smiled knowingly at his words and did not point it out. She reached out her hand and let Yu Qianzhou hold it. The two of them disappeared together. When they reappeared, a spacious, bright, and unique room made Bai Suzhen's eyes flicker endlessly. The room was a suite of rooms with clean white jade floors. There were a few rattan chairs in the living room. It was spacious and bright, and other than that, there were no other furnishings. Bai Suzhen looked at Yu Qianzhou with a puzzled expression. Yu Qianzhou immediately smiled and explained, "This is the World Commerce Association. This room is the room I live in. There are no furnishings in the room. It's too simple." Bai Suzhen let go of his hand and walked to the side of a few rattan chairs to feel around. Then, she pushed open the doors of a few small rooms and looked inside. She found that it was empty. Indeed, there was nothing prepared. Finally, she walked to the window of the living room and looked out at the tens of thousands of mountains. The mountaintops were occupied by houses and there were continuous streams of light rising and falling in the sky. For a moment, she was a little absent-minded. She murmured as if she was talking in a dream, "Is this the legendary immortal realm?" Yu Qianqiu walked behind her, hugged her waist, and whispered in her ear, "You're not mistaken, this is the celestial realm." Bai Suzhen tilted her head slightly and leaned on his shoulder. "Time flies. I still remember that you were still a dispirited little disciple of An Kuangsang in that cave. I didn't expect you to have gone so far. You brought me out of that cave all those years ago, and now you've brought me to the immortal world. All of this feels like a dream. This is not a dream. This is reality." Yu Qianqiu buried his head in that fair neck and deeply inhaled the fragrance. He said with satisfaction, "In order to let the people I love have better and more beautiful dreams, I have always been working hard." Bai Suzhen's eyes were a little blurred. She didn't say a word and just quietly leaned on Yu Qianqiu's shoulder, looking out of the window peacefully. The two of them leaned on each other for a long time. Then, Yu Qianqiu reluctantly broke the silence and said, "Let's go, I'll take you to see your future master." "Okay." Bai Suzhen turned around with a peaceful face. Yu Qianqiu took her hand and led her outside. When they arrived at the door of Wei Chuanqiu's room, Yu Qianqiu pushed it open and found that Wei Chuanqiu wasn't there. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and thought that the old guy couldn't have run away, right? He was a little worried as he pulled Bai Suzhen towards the rooftop. Bai Suzhen quietly followed him from start to finish. She was calm in this strange place. Wherever he pulled her, her white dress fluttered in the wind. She followed him, trusting him unreservedly. When the two of them reached the rooftop, Yu Qianqiu immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Wei Chuanqiu didn't run away. He was standing side by side with Yun Peng in front of the white jade railing. Yu Qianqiu pointed at Wei Chuanqiu's thin back and said, "He is the green-winged bat king Wei Chuanqiu. He is also the master I found for you. That is the White Cloud Mountain Lord Yun Peng, who is equally famous as the Bat King Wei Chuanqiu." The sound of Yu Qianqiu's words attracted Yun Peng's attention. Yun Peng turned around and looked at Bai Suzhen. Yun Peng, who had always been cold and indifferent, looked like he had seen a ghost. He slowly turned around and stared at Bai Suzhen, dumbfounded. Wei Chuanqiu, who was beside him, didn't move at all. His face was full of anger. He held the white jade railing with both hands and muttered, "This brat isn't a good thing. He always wants to take advantage of me. Did he bring someone with him?" Yun Peng's Adam's apple moved up and down as he swallowed with difficulty. He slowly patted Wei Chuanqiu's shoulder and said, "Take a look." Wei Chuanqiu shook off his hand and scolded, "I already said that this brat isn't a good thing. I don't need to look to know that he brought me a disciple. You have to take a look. I think I'm seeing things." This time, Yun Peng didn't pat him, but forcefully turned him around. Wei Chuanqiu glanced at him in annoyance. But this glance made Wei Chuanqiu feel as if he had been struck by lightning. He felt as if electricity was running through his body and his heart was beating wildly. He was completely stunned on the spot. His small eyes were wide open and his mouth was dry. His breathing became heavier and heavier. What were these two old fellows doing? Even if they had never seen a beauty before, there was no need to put on such a lecherous look. Yu Qianqiu looked at the two of them suspiciously. After standing in front of them, the two of them continued to stare at Bai Suzhen without blinking. Even though Bai Suzhen was calm and tranquil, she felt numb from the two people's gazes. She couldn't help but look at Yu Qianqiu. Seeing that Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything, she let go of Yu Qianqiu's hand. A gust of wind blew and Bai Suzhen, dressed in white, bowed and said, "Bai Suzhen greets the two seniors." "Bai Suzhen?" Yun Peng muttered and looked at Yu Qianqiu. Who knew that Wei Chuanqiu, who was at the side, turned a deaf ear to Bai Suzhen. As if having an epileptic seizure, he made a hugging gesture with both hands and walked shakily towards Bai Suzhen. His face was filled with surprise and joy. He panted and said, Xiao Yu, is that you? Is it really you? Father thought you. Why have you been hiding from Father? I know you're angry at Father. It's all Father's fault. I shouldn't have left you two mother and daughter alone. Bai Suzhen was confused by him. She looked at Yu Qianzhou with a puzzled expression, as if asking, is this the master you found for me? Yu Qianzhou raised his eyebrows and narrowed his eyes. He stared at Wei Chuanxiu, who was walking over shakily, to see what he was up to. However, Wei Chuanxiu's next action immediately made him angry. He saw Wei Chuanxiu's pair of experienced hands actually hug Bai Suzhen's fair and clean face. It was really intolerable. You your mother. Yu Qianzhou was furious. He suddenly flared up and kicked Wei Chuanxiu's face. Ah! Wei Chuanxiu screamed and fell to the ground. Before he could react to what was going on, he saw Yu Qianzhou pouncing on him. He pinned him to the ground and gave him a crazy beating. Wei Chuanxiu cried out in pain. Old shameless thing, you actually dare to play this trick. You dare to take liberties with my woman in front of me. Yu Qianzhou flew into a rage. He punched and kicked Wei Chuanxiu, who was on the ground. Bai Suzhen was stunned. Yunpeng was also stunned. No one expected this scene to happen. When Yunpeng reacted and wanted to help, he only heard Yu Qianzhou scream in pain. He flew out with a shadow. Wei Chuanxiu jumped up and pointed at Yu Qianzhou, who was rolling on the ground a dozen meters away. He shouted angrily, "You brat, do you want to die? You dare to hit Grandpa again? You don't want to live anymore." From the looks of it, he was beaten awake by Yu Qianzhou. A white shadow flashed and Bai Suzhen had already flashed to Yu Qianzhou's side. She supported Yu Qianzhou, who was crawling up, and asked anxiously, "Are you okay?" Yu Qianzhou also had a footprint on his face. He was shaking his head and seemed to be a little dizzy. "Xiao Yu, do you hate Daddy so much that you would rather help him than Daddy?" Wei Chuanxiu looked at Bai Suzhen, who was supporting Yu Qianzhou, and said bitterly. Tears were already welling up in her eyes. Her emotions were fluctuating a little. Old B** starred, "I'm going to kill you." Yu Qianzhou shook his dizzy head and shouted randomly. He couldn't even tell which direction he was going in. "Both of you shut up." Yunpeng shouted coldly and flashed to the middle of the two enemies. He first waved his hand and laid a soundproof enchantment on the rooftop. Then, he looked at both sides and stared at Wei Chuanxiu and said, "Wei Chuanxiu, stop fooling around. Wake up. This person isn't Xiao Yu, Xiao Yu, is already dead." "Nonsense. Xiao Yu, is clearly standing here." Wei Chuanxiu shouted, himself hoarse. Fortunately, Yunpeng had the foresight to lay a soundproof enchantment on the rooftop first. Otherwise, his shout would definitely attract a lot of people to watch the show. Yu Qianzhou, who had woken up from shaking his head, immediately pointed at Wei Chuanxiu and scolded, "Old lunatic, are you done with acting like a hooligan? Do you think I'm afraid of you? I was a hooligan leader in my previous life, and I specialized in dealing with hooligans." To him, anything could be discussed. However, if someone dared to touch Bai Suzhen, then there was absolutely no room for discussion. "Yu Qianzhou, shut up." After Yunpeng shouted, he immediately cupped his fists at Bai Suzhen and said, "Miss Bai, right? Please forgive me. This old friend of mine thought that you were his daughter who had passed away many years ago. He didn't mean anything else because you look too much like his daughter. Even I thought that I was hallucinating when I saw you. He didn't choose the wrong person to explain to." At this moment, Wei Chuanxiu and Yu Qianzhou were a little crazy. His explanation was very unpleasant to listen to. When Bai Suzhen heard what he said and combined it with their reaction when they saw her, she immediately understood and nodded. "Yu Qianzhou, don't be impulsive. It's a misunderstanding." Bai Suzhen held back the furious Yu Qianzhou and shouted. Her words were more effective than anyone else's. Yu Qianchou, who was rolling up his sleeves and kicking and scolding, immediately stopped. Bai Suzhen immediately seized the opportunity to explain with Yun Peng's words. You look very much like his dead daughter. Yu Qianchou gradually calmed down. He wiped his faintly aching face and turned to Yun Peng and said, Senior Yun, are you sure you didn't see wrongly? Yun Peng blocked Wei Chuanxiu and shook his head. How could I see wrongly? Very similar, simply too similar. It's as if they were carved from the same mold. The only difference is that their temperaments are as different as the clouds and mud. Xiao Yu is smart and eccentric, while she is graceful and quiet. No, she is Xiao Yu Wei Chuanxiu shouted crazily and tried to break free from Yun Peng's obstruction. A cold light flashed in Yun Peng's eyes. His 5 fingers formed into eagle claws and faintly glowed with a golden light. He streaked across like lightning and directly grabbed Wei Chuanxiu's collarbone. He shouted coldly, Open your eyes and look clearly. Look at this lady's original form. Is she your Xiao Yu Chapter 900. Under Yun Peng's coercion, a layer of green light appeared in Wei Chuanxiu's eyes. When he saw Bai Suzhen's true form, he was dumbfounded. He murmured, White fox. How could this be? How could this be? She's not Xiao Yu at all. She only looks like her. Yun Peng pulled Wei Chuanxiu's arm. Looks like. Wei Chuanxiu looked at Bai Suzhen in a daze. He was stunned on the spot. Yu Qianchou knew that he couldn't talk to him for a while. He could only wait for him to wake up. He pulled Bai Suzhen and said, There's something wrong with this guy's brain. Let's go. Before Bai Suzhen was pulled away, she looked back at Wei Chuanxiu with pity. After the two returned to the room, Yu Qianchou leaned back on the rattan chair. He didn't expect something like this to happen. Bai Suzhen shook her head with a faint smile. She took out a white handkerchief and wiped the footprint on his face. With this warmth, Yu Qianchou's mood improved a lot. He pulled Bai Suzhen to sit with him and told Bai Suzhen everything he knew about the immortal world. No matter how surprising and dangerous Yu Qianchou's story was, Bai Suzhen always had a faint smile on her face. She listened carefully and would occasionally ask a question. Unknowingly, Yu Qianchou lied on Bai Suzhen's lap again. He didn't know when, but Yu Qianchou fell asleep as he talked. On the long rattan chair in the living room, Bai Suzhen, dressed in white, sat there quietly. She hugged her head on her lap. This quiet scene was suddenly broken by a knock on the door. Yu Qianchou suddenly sat up and shouted, Who is it? Come in. The door was pushed open, and Wei Chuanxiu carefully poked her head out. She smiled and nodded at the two of them. Yu Qianchou immediately rolled his eyes and shouted, You shameless old thing, you even attacked me just now. I don't want to see you, scram. Wei Chuanxiu nodded and bowed, smiling apologetically, It's a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. Don't take it to heart. As he spoke, he closed the door and walked over with a smug face. His eyes kept sneaking glances at Bai Suzhen's face. Wei Chuanxiu casually cast a soundproof enchantment in the room, then dragged a rattan chair and sat across the two of them. She nervously asked Bai Suzhen, Miss, may I know where is this immortal land? What? Yu Qianchou glared at him and said, She's my woman. What does it have to do with you where she is? Are you up to no good? No, no. Wei Chuanxiu waved her hand and said, It's just that she looks too much like my late daughter. As she spoke, she checked Bai Suzhen's cultivation and found that she was only at the end of the tribulation stage. She then asked Yu Qianchou, She's the disciple you found for me? Yu Qianchou looked at the old man from head to toe and snorted coldly, Originally, but I think there's something wrong with your character. I really don't feel at ease letting her be your disciple. Just pretend I didn't say anything about this. Don't mention it again in the future. I'll let her go back tomorrow. Bai Suzhen looked at him in surprise. Ah. Go back. Wei Chuanqiu suddenly stood up and pointed at Yu Qianzhou anxiously. You, how can you go back on your words? How can you go back on what you said? Yu Qianzhou was happy in his heart. He also stood up and walked around Wei Chuanqiu twice. He said strangely, you didn't agree at first. Isn't what I'm doing now exactly what you want? Bat King Wei, tell me honestly, what do you want? Just as Wei Chuanqiu was about to explain, he was taken aback. He took 2 steps back and looked at Yu Qianzhou. Suddenly, he chuckled and said, don't give me that. You know what you're thinking. You just want to take this opportunity to threaten me and force me to teach you the Heart Sutra. As he spoke, he looked back at Bai Suzhen and said, that's not a problem. I can promise you, but you have to promise me one thing. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. He had indeed seen through Wei Chuanqiu's weakness. He wanted to use this opportunity to force Wei Chuanqiu to teach Bai Suzhen the entire 10,000 Demons Heart Sutra. This was because their previous agreement was that Wei Chuanqiu's cultivation technique would allow Bai Suzhen to protect herself against experts below the Immortal Emperor stage. Who would have thought that Wei Chuanqiu was also an old fox? He saw through the other party's scheme in an instant. Do you think everyone is as despicable and shameless as you? Yu Qianzhou said with a face full of disdain. Wei Chuanqiu laughed coldly. No matter what he said, he continued, as long as you agree to my condition, I will do my best to teach you the 10,000 Demons Heart Sutra. If you don't agree, then forget it. But I warn you, this is your last chance. If you reject it, there will not be a second chance. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. The corner of his mouth twitched. He gritted his teeth and said, Old bat, you win. But I also warn you, I will not agree to conditions that are too excessive. Speak. What condition? Wei Chuanqiu became slightly agitated when he heard that. He did his best to suppress his rising and falling chest. He looked at Bai Suzhen and said word by word, as long as you agree to be my daughter, I can make you the #1 expert of the demon race. Bai Suzhen's red lips parted slightly. She was stunned. Yu Qianzhou was also speechless. He did not expect Wei Chuanqiu to make such a request. The room immediately became quiet. Wei Chuanqiu said anxiously, why? Can't you agree? Bai Suzhen was at a loss. She looked at Yu Qianzhou for help. Yu Qianzhou scratched his head helplessly. This request could be said to be excessive, but it could also be said to be not excessive. It all depended on what the person involved thought. He coughed awkwardly and said, Bat King Wei, I understand your feelings. But this kind of thing cannot be forced. He turned to look at Bai Suzhen and said, you decide for yourself. Don't force it. We have not reached the point where we have to sell our bodies for glory. Bai Suzhen furrowed her brows. Becoming someone else's daughter? This decision was simply too difficult for her. The most important thing was that the 10,000 Demons Heart Sutra had no attraction to her at all. To become someone else's daughter for something that had no attraction at all, no one was willing to do it. However, what made her hesitant was that Yu Qianzhou clearly hoped that she would cultivate the Myriad Goblin Heart Sutra. After she cultivated the Myriad Goblin Heart Sutra, she would definitely be of help to Yu Qianzhou. Yu Qianzhou could tell that Bai Suzhen was unwilling. He immediately said without hesitation, Bat King Wei, let's drop this matter. Don't mention it again. You can keep the Myriad Goblin Heart Sutra and slowly cultivate it. She is she and you are you. How can your opinion represent hers? Wei Chuanqiu roared. Then, he strode in front of Bai Suzhen and squeezed out a smile, don't worry. All I want is a status. In the future, you and I can just call each other father and daughter. I don't really want you to be my daughter and fulfill the filial duties of a daughter. Yu Qianzhou rolled his eyes and pulled Bai Suzhen away, saying, this guy has gone crazy thinking about his daughter. Follow me and ignore him. However, what surprised him was that Bai Suzhen paused and smiled as she let go of his hand. Then, she bowed to Wei Chuanqiu and said, Bai Suzhen greets foster father. Silence. The room was instantly so silent that one could hear a pin drop. Yu Qianqiu stared at Bai Suzhen in bewilderment. After a moment of shock, Wei Chuanqiu's body suddenly trembled violently. He burst into wild laughter, tears streaming down his face. After a long while, he finally stopped laughing. He took a step forward and placed his hands on Bai Suzhen's shoulders. His eyes were red as he panted heavily, "My good daughter. My good daughter. Don't worry. From today onwards, I will let you become the entire demon race. No, I will let you become the #1 expert in the 3 realms. From today onwards, no one will be able to hurt you. I promise that I will never let anyone hurt you again." As he spoke, he pulled Bai Suzhen into his arms and wailed, "Xiao Yu, it's all father's fault. I shouldn't have left you and your mother behind. I promise you that I won't let anyone harm a single hair on your body in the future." Suddenly being hugged by a strange man like this, Bai Suzhen was at a loss of what to do. Yu Qianqiu's expression was also twitching. He could tell that Wei Chuanqiu was usually quite normal, but once he touched his dead daughter, he would immediately become insane. To put it bluntly, he was suffering from intermittent mental illness. It was the kind of mental illness that would immediately act up when he was stimulated. Damn it! I have eyes but fail to see. How did I get mixed up with a mental patient? Yu Qianqiu took a step forward and pulled Wei Chuanqiu with all his might. "Old bat, let go of me. Men and women should not touch each other. Don't pretend to be sick to take advantage of me." He secretly hit Wei Chuanqiu a few times before he finally released the bear hug in pain. Actually, he didn't want to argue with a mental patient. "But no matter how sick you are, you can't hug my woman. Not to mention in front of me." Fortunately, Wei Chuanqiu's illness wasn't serious. After he let go in pain, he immediately knew that he had lost control. He wiped his tears and apologized profusely. It was foster father who lost control. As he said that, he took out the bat jade pendant carved from green jade and handed it to Bai Suzhen. "This is foster father's greeting gift. Put it on, put it on." Bai Suzhen took it and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She hung the jade pendant on her waist as she was told. Wei Chuanqiu's eyes lit up as he nodded repeatedly and said, "Similar, really similar. Wait a moment." After saying that, he quickly opened the door and disappeared outside the door. Bai Suzhen and Yu Qianqiu looked at each other. They didn't know what Wei Chuanqiu wanted them to wait for. In the end, he didn't come back after waiting for a while. Yu Qianqiu held Bai Suzhen's hand and shook his head helplessly. "So this old man is sick. It's really hard on you." "It's nothing. Actually, he's quite pitiful." Bai Suzhen smiled faintly. Just as the two of them were sighing, the door was suddenly slammed open with a bang. They saw Wei Chuanqiu dragging the furious Big Ming Luan with one hand and the frowning Yun Peng with the other. Wei Chuanqiu pointed at Bai Suzhen and said excitedly, "Don't you think they look alike? Old man, are you looking for a beating?" "I." The furious Big Ming Luan took a glance and was instantly stunned. He couldn't move his eyes away from Bai Suzhen and cried out involuntarily, "Xiao Yu, You. Aren't you?" Chapter 901. Even though Yun Peng knew that Bai Suzhen wasn't Xiao Yu, when he saw Bai Suzhen's slender and graceful figure with the bat jade pendant on her waist, he couldn't help but fall into a trance. She was almost exactly the same as the Xiao Yu, in his memory. It was as if the Xiao Yu, who smiled and called him third uncle, was right in front of him. "She isn't Xiao Yu, she just looks like Xiao Yu, Yun Peng sighed softly. De Ming Luan looked at him in astonishment, so Yun Peng told him the truth in a concise manner. He told him that the person in front of him was called Bai Suzhen and that she was Yu Qianzhou's woman. It was a complete coincidence. Similar, too similar. Deming Luan shook his head and exclaimed. Wei Chuanxiu immediately pointed at the two of them and said to Bai Suzhen, "This is your uncle Deming Luan, and this is your third uncle Yun Peng." When the three of them were together, Deming Luan was the eldest, Wei Chuanxiu was the second, and Yun Peng was the third. It coincided with the saying, "A bright moon shines in the sky, green wings and jade wings follow." Bai Suzhen had heard of these two people's names from Yu Qianzhou. Since Yu Qianzhou had told her about them, it would not be too much for her to address them as a senior. She immediately bowed to the two of them, first uncle, third uncle Yun. Deming Luan and Yun Peng both inhaled a breath of cold air. They hadn't heard such a familiar form of address for many years. They nodded with some emotion, "Good, good, good." Yu Qianzhou stood at the side and looked at one and the other. In the end, he looked at Bai Suzhen with a hint of boredom. He was really speechless. He sighed in his heart that Bai Suzhen's luck was too good. The moment she arrived in the immortal world, she had a foster father and a first uncle and third uncle. These were three early-stage immortal emperor experts. Especially Deming Luan's identity as the leader of the Chamber of Commerce Alliance, it was even more incredible. With these three people protecting her, who would dare to touch Bai Suzhen? Yu Qianzhou was happy to see such a situation. However, Yu Qianzhou was a little depressed. Bai Suzhen was his woman, and Wei Chuanxiu was now Bai Suzhen's adoptive father. Didn't that mean that his status was a generation lower than Wei Chuanxiu's? It seemed like it would be inconvenient for him to make a move on her in the future. The happiest person in the room was none other than Wei Chuanxiu. She was grinning from ear to ear. Yu Qianzhou understood that this mental patient had found spiritual sustenance. He reckoned that he had entrusted his fatherly love, which he had nowhere to vent, to Bai Suzhen. It really made one speechless. The lively atmosphere finally ended with the departure of the Great Bright Wheel and Yun Peng. However, Wei Chuanxiu was still looking at Bai Suzhen with a smile. The more she looked at her, the more she liked her. Actually, Bai Suzhen's appearance and gentle and amiable temperament easily gave people a sense of closeness. This temperament was a reaction from the inside out. It was filled with a tranquility that stood aloof from worldly affairs. It could not be faked. At the side, Yu Qianzhou could not stand it anymore. He coughed and said, "Bat King Wei, stop smiling foolishly. It's time to get to the point." Oh. After Wei Chuanxiu reacted, her smile disappeared and was replaced with a dignified expression. She slowly said to Bai Suzhen, "The ancestor of all demons, Tai Shu, wrote the 10,000 Demons Heart Sutra. In the opening chapter, there is a saying that demons also have a Tao. Those who walk the Tao are different from the human Tao. Those who walk the ghost Tao are different from the ghost Tao. Those who walk the devil Tao are different from the devil Tao. Those who cultivate the immortal body, cultivate the myriad transformations technique, and obtain the unfathomable techniques are called the devil Tao." What's that? Yu Qianzhou was confused. He stretched his head over and asked, "There are humans, ghosts, and devils. How can one cultivate such complicated things? It's none of your business. Why are you interrupting? Why are you still here?" Wei Chuanxiu glared at him and said, "This is the devil Tao. It's not something you can peek at. Scram. I don't want to learn it. I promise I won't interrupt anymore. I'll just listen from the side." Yu Qianzhou smiled apologetically. "Are you going to scram or not?" Wei Chuanxiu said with a ferocious expression. Fine, fine, fine. Take your time to teach me. I'll scram, I'll scram." Yu Qianzhou nodded and bowed as he retreated. He was purely curious. Actually, he had no intention of secretly learning it. Moreover, this devil Dao was not something he could cultivate. Moreover, it was Bai Suzhen who was learning it. In order not to affect Bai Suzhen, he could only obediently scram. When Bai Suzhen saw his behavior, she could not help but cover her mouth and chuckle. As a result, Yu Qianzhou rolled his eyes at her as she walked out of the door. After the door was closed, Wei Chuanxiu was still worried. He consecutively set up a few soundproof enchantments in the room. Then, he walked back and said, although I have studied this Thousand Devil Heart Sutra for a long time, I have never cultivated it due to other reasons. However, after 10,000 years of study, I have already memorized the steps of cultivation. It should be able to answer some of your doubts. So, I can only impart it to you. As for the cultivation, you still have to rely on yourself. We'll do it step by step. Let's start from the first scroll. Sit down and listen to me slowly. Wei Chuanxiu waved his sleeves. The rattan chairs in the living room moved to the side of the wall. The two of them sat cross-legged. When both of them had calmed down, Wei Chuanxiu began to slowly explain the Thousand Devil Heart Sutra. Yu Qianzhou, who was standing outside the door, looked around for a while. He could not help but look inside through the crack in the door. He really wanted to see what was so special about this grimoire that was left behind by an expert who could be mentioned in the same breath as the devil god. Unfortunately, the two of them sat cross-legged on the floor and listened for a long time. However, they could not hear a single sound. They could not help but fling their sleeves and leave resentfully. The cultivation world and the human world had already calmed down. Due to the strong restrictions of the lords of the various countries all withdrew their disciples and strictly ordered them not to go out and cause trouble. They could only concentrate on cultivating in their sections. In the Chinese cultivation world, the Green sect and the Hong sect, the two big sects, passed down Yu Qianzhou's decree and forcefully interfered. This also forced everyone to stop fighting with the various countries. At this point, the whole cultivation world and the human world had entered an unprecedented peace. Due to the absence of the cultivation world's interference, China's new aristocratic Shi dynasty also began to fearlessly rectify the people's lives. China, which had been plunged into the flames of war, entered a state of recuperation. Corvée labor was reduced, taxes were reduced, and the people happily welcomed the new dynasty. Deep in the wilderness of China, on the main peak of the undulating mountain range, there was a majestic building complex. This was the #1 sect of the Devil Dao, the 10,000 Demons. In the old forest behind the majestic building, there was a lonely house built against the mountain. This was the place where the previous leader of the 10,000 Demons, Yan Wuchen, cultivated. A gust of autumn wind blew, and the yellow leaves on the treetops fluttered into the courtyard. A young disciple of the 10,000 Demons, who had been in charge of serving the previous leader, was sweeping the fallen leaves in the courtyard with a large broom. The sound of the sweeping echoed in the quiet courtyard. Yan Wuchen, who was dressed in black, stood on the steps of the house. His white hair danced slightly in the autumn wind. He stood quietly on the steps and stared at the young disciple who was sweeping the floor without blinking. Yan Wuchen sighed softly, either because he suddenly thought of something or because he had a feeling in his heart. At this moment, a figure landed outside the courtyard. Xiao Wuyuan strode in. When he passed by the young disciple, he suddenly stopped and said, "Shouchen, I haven't seen you for a long time. Where have you been?" The young disciple stopped and bowed. "Uncle Master, you must be joking. I've been serving the Grandmaster here, where else could I go? Maybe I didn't see you every time you came." He was the disciple of the current leader of the 10,000 Demons, Bu Yunxiao. He was sent here by his master to serve the Grandmaster. Hearing this, Qiao Wuyuan didn't mind. He nodded and walked straight to Yan Wuchen, who was on the steps of the main house. When he reached the bottom of the steps, he bowed and said, "Master, I'm ashamed. I've sent many people to the various countries to ask around, but I couldn't find any news about eldest senior brother and the others. I don't even know where they are hiding. Now that the cultivation world of the various countries was at peace with each other, there was no longer any hostility between them. This gave Qiu Wuyuan the opportunity to send people to find out about Yan Bugui and his sons. If it was in the past, the Chinese cultivation world wouldn't have dared to walk around the various countries. Sigh. Yan Wuchen sighed softly and said, Wuyuan, I appreciate your kindness, but they only have themselves to blame. Whether they live or die, let them be. You don't have to worry about them anymore. How can I do that? Qiu Wuyuan said respectfully, eldest senior brother is master's only son, and Zhui Xing is your only grandson. No matter how many mistakes they have made, they are still your only bloodline. Others can ignore them, but I can't. With a wave of his hand, a black crescent moon that was 1 meter long and nearly 2 meters wide appeared in front of him. The black crescent moon was cold and frightening, but its sharp blade shone with a cold blue light mixed with red shadows. Its surface was engraved with all kinds of strange patterns. This was a treasure that Yan Wuchen had unintentionally picked up all those years ago. Although its origins were unknown, it was incomparably sharp, and it had helped Yan Wuchen gain a fearsome reputation back then. He had treated it as a top-notch magical treasure, and Yan Wuchen had named it the Black Moon Pagoda. Qiu Wuyuan continued, this Black Moon Pagoda is Master's personal treasure. Master once said that you want the Yan family to pass it down from generation to generation. I've always remembered these words. Just as the Black Moon Pagoda appeared, the sweeping sounds in the courtyard stopped for a moment. Shouchen's eyes shone with a strange light as he stared at the floating Black Moon Pagoda. Then, he lowered his head and continued sweeping. However, his actions were all seen by Yan Wuchen, who was constantly paying attention to him. Yan Wuchen furrowed his brows and glared at Qiu Wuhui angrily, since I've already passed it to you, then I have my reasons for passing it to you. Don't waste your breath here. Put it away and scram. Without my summons, you are not allowed to come here again. Qiu Wuyuan was stunned. It had been a long time since Master lost his temper with him. He didn't know what was wrong with him today. He wanted to say something, but seeing that Master was really angry, he cupped his hands and said, yes. Then, he put away the Black Moon Pagoda, turned around respectfully, and left obediently. Chapter 902. As soon as Qiu Wuyuan left the courtyard, the sound of sweeping stopped. Shouchen walked towards the door with the broom in his hand. Yan Wuchen, who was standing on the stairs, narrowed his eyes and shouted, stop. What do you want? The handsome Shouchen slowly turned around and looked at Yan Wuchen. He said respectfully, I just want to go out for a walk. You are not allowed to leave this courtyard without my permission. Yan Wuchen said sternly. Shouchen was startled, but he nodded and said, yes. He walked to the big tree beside the door and leaned the broom against the tree. Then, he walked towards the main hall without a word. He walked up the stairs and bowed to Yan Wuchen when he passed him. Then, he walked into the house. When he reappeared, he was already walking out from the back door of the main hall. He slowly walked into a cave in the mountain wall of the backyard. After passing through a dark cave passage, the front suddenly opened up. There was a spacious space in the belly of the mountain. There were tables, chairs, and beds. This cave was Yan Wuchen's cultivation place, and it was also the forbidden area of the 10,000 demons. Even the current palace lord of the 10,000 demons, Bu Yunxiao, did not dare to trespass. However, the strange thing was that Yan Bugui, who had disappeared from the cultivation world for a long time, was brazenly sitting at a table and drinking wine. Shouchen frowned slightly. He strode over and snatched the wine jug from the already drunk Yan Bugui's hand. Yan Bugui tilted his head to look at Shouchen and laughed miserably. Now that we are hiding in this dark place, we don't even dare to take a step out of the cave. We don't even know when this kind of life will end. Can't I even have a drink? At this moment, the stone niche on the main seat slowly moved away. Man Hu and his martial brothers, who had disappeared from the cultivation world for a long time, walked out. Behind them was third brother Xian. The 7 of them were covered in dust. Shouchen glanced at them and placed the wine jug in front of Yen Bugui. Yen Bugui hugged the wine jug and gulped it down. The secret room is almost finished. We just need to do some simple decorations and it can be used. Man Hu reported. The appearance of these people, coupled with their respectful attitude towards Shouchen, immediately made Shouchen's identity seem even more mysterious. In fact, Shouchen was none other than Yan Juexing, who was almost killed by Yu Qianzhou in Lingfang Valley. Because his primordial spirit was not destroyed, he took over Shouchen's body and was reborn. In fact, Yan Juexing himself had no idea what was going on. Back in Spirit Fang Valley, he thought he was dead. Who knew that when he woke up, he would find that he had returned to the side of his grandfather, the 10,000 demons. After waking up, Yan Juexing realized that his demonic arts had been destroyed and he had changed beyond recognition. Fortunately, he was still alive with another identity. The strangest thing was that Yan Juexing realized that Shouchen's body had already been forged into a demonic body. It was as though his body was naturally prepared for him. Yan Juexing could not understand such a strange phenomenon. In the end, he could only attribute it to the magic of demonic arts. However, Shouchen was originally someone who served Yan Wuchen. After being reborn after being taken over by Yan Juexing, his words and actions were naturally very different from the original Shouchen. It was impossible to hide from Yan Wuchen's eyes. After a slight contact, Yan Wuchen immediately noticed something suspicious. Yan Juexing did not hide anything. He still needed Yan Wuchen's help if he wanted to recover, so he told Yan Wuchen the truth in full detail. Yan Wuchen was shocked when he learned about this. He did not expect such an unbelievable thing to happen. Although Yan Juexing had become a rat that everyone wanted to kill in the cultivation world, Yan Juexing was his grandson after all. He could not bring himself to kill him, so he could only take him in quietly. However, what happened next was that his son, Yen Bugui, Man Hu, and the others had somehow gotten the news that Yan Juexing was here and had come back. This made Yan Wuchen very uneasy. The cultivation world was now the world of Yu Qianzhou, and Yan Juexing was the person Yu Qianzhou had ordered the world to kill. If the news of him taking in Yan Juexing and the others was spread, it would undoubtedly bring disaster to the 10,000 demons. However, the 10,000 demons did not belong to his 10,000 demons. Yen Bugui and Yan Juexing were his son and grandson. It was easy to say that he would put family before family, but it was very difficult to do it. Although he was in a dilemma, Yan Wuchen knew that cultivators always spoke with their strength. The reason why Yu Qianzhou could command the world was that he was now the #1 expert in the world. Yan Wuchen subconsciously felt proud that his own grandson was able to make Yu Qianzhou feel a deep sense of fear. As for whether or not his grandson cultivated some evil demonic art, it didn't matter to Yan Wuchen because he thought of himself as a demonic cultivator. Therefore, Yan Wuchen hoped that Yan Juexing would have the strength to challenge Yu Qianzhou. It would be best if he could kill Yu Qianzhou and then Yan Juexing himself would ascend to the throne of the world's #1 expert. At that time, no one in the world would dare to criticize the Yan family. Instead, they would spare no effort to criticize Yu Qianzhou. However, he was also worried that Yan Juexing would fail again because he could not afford to fail. At that time, the whole 10,000 demons would be implicated. Therefore, while he was trying his best to help Yan Juexing in his cultivation, he kept restricting Yan Juexing. Before he had the strength to fight against Yu Qianzhou, he was not allowed to leave this place at will. Devouring a nascent soul and using a virgin body to cultivate. After Yan Wuchen saw the bloody scenes of Yan Juexing's cultivation, he felt terrified. Only then did he realize that the demonic cultivation method his grandson cultivated was very different from the demonic cultivation method he knew. It was extremely evil. Seeing that Qiu Wuyuan's arrival had attracted Yan Zhuixing's interest, Yan Wuchen was shocked. He mistakenly thought that Yan Zhuixing wanted to attack his disciple. However, he did not know that Yan Zhuixing was not interested in Qiu Wuyuan, but the things in Qiu Wuyuan's hands. Secret room. Yan Zhuixing suddenly shook his head and laughed. I really did not expect that there would be a magical weapon from the demonic world hidden in the 10,000 demons. I have been thinking for a long time and wanted to forge a magical weapon that I could use. I did not expect it to be right in front of my eyes. I actually saw it today. The few of them looked at each other. Man Hu asked suspiciously, there is a magical weapon from the demonic world hidden in the 10,000 demons? How is that possible? Yen Bugue, who had been drinking wine by himself, stopped and started to ponder. I also thought that it was impossible, but I saw it with my own eyes just now. It can't be wrong. Yan Zhuixing said in high spirits, before the demonic god ascended to the divine world, he left behind a magical weapon for his descendants. It is called the demon blade. There is a picture of the demon blade in the demonic book. It is shaped like a crescent moon. It is exactly the same as the one I saw just now. It is a waste for such a magical weapon to fall into the hands of Qiu Wuyuan. What a pity. Shaped like a crescent moon. Ah! Yen Bugue suddenly stood up and exclaimed, are you talking about the Black Moon Pagoda? Yan Zhuixing looked at him and nodded with a smile. That's right. It is the Black Moon Pagoda. In the past, I heard that my grandpa had a famous treasure in his hands, which helped him run unhindered in the Chinese cultivation world. Unfortunately, I've never seen it. I didn't expect it to be a magic weapon left by the devil god, the devil blade. To others, the demon blade is just a sharp magical weapon. But to me, it can only be used with the corresponding demonic technique to truly display the monstrous power of the demon blade. If we knew that the Black Moon Pagoda was the demon blade, we would not have ended up like this. The outcome of the battle at Lingfang Valley is still uncertain. Man Hu was pleasantly surprised. Since the demon blade is so powerful, why not ask the old palace master to bestow the Black Moon Pagoda to junior brother so that you can take revenge for master? No rush. A demonic red light flashed in Yan Zhuixing's eyes. He snorted. Because of our impulsiveness, we have already suffered too many losses. We cannot do things that we are not confident in anymore. Besides, my cultivation and my damaged primordial spirit have yet to recover, so we can't act rashly in case someone discovers us. Let's leave the Black Moon Pagoda in Qiu Wuyuan's hands for the time being. When I recover, it will be a piece of cake to take it back. Even if I get it now, I cannot cultivate that profound demonic technique in my current condition. Speaking of the damage to the primordial spirit, Yan Zhuixing still had lingering fears. After the 7 demonic spirit serpents that were refined from the 7 strands of his primordial spirit were destroyed by Yu Qianqiu, it was equivalent to his primordial spirit being heavily injured. Logically speaking, he should have died on the spot, and at the very least, he should have become an idiot. However, he was able to reincarnate and maintain his consciousness, which was a miracle. Hearing what he said, Man Hu and the others felt that it was a pity. However, they also knew that no matter how eager they were for revenge, they could not be too hasty. Otherwise, the losses would outweigh the gains. Yen Bugue, who was holding the wine pot, suddenly stared at Yan Zhuixing and sighed. Indeed, you cannot be impulsive anymore. This Yu Qianqiu caused you to become like this. You must not let him go. Sigh. If your mother sees your current appearance, she will definitely hate me to death. It's not a bad thing to become like this. At least I can deceive people now. Yan Zhuixing stood up and touched his face. He said disapprovingly, as long as my primordial spirit is still my primordial spirit. When my primordial spirit recovers and my cultivation reaches a certain level, it will be a piece of cake to restore my original appearance." As soon as he said that, the few of them looked at each other in confusion. Yan Zhuixing immediately laughed and explained, "In the demonic book, there is a great technique of reincarnation. As long as the primordial spirit is not destroyed, one can occupy another's body and be reborn. Although I have not cultivated it yet, I believe that my rebirth this time has something to do with this great technique in the demonic book. After the reincarnation, as long as your cultivation reaches a certain level, you can perform the last step. It is called birth of the devil's heart. It is similar to what we commonly call appearance from the heart. It is a kind of feedback from the inside to the outside. Whatever your primordial spirit is, your physical body will be the same. At that time, I, Yan Zhuixing, will still be me. Who can tell that I have reincarnated?" Ha! Ha! Savage laughter reverberated in the belly of the mountain. Chapter 903. In a small conference room on the 21st floor of the World Commerce Association, Yu Qianzhou and Nongzhu sat facing each other for a long time, separated by a round table. There was no other reason for them to sit here but because Nongzhu couldn't stand it anymore. Not only did he listen to Yu Qianzhou's orders all day, but most importantly, Yu Qianzhou always made him do odd jobs and make him do anything that was embarrassing. Putting aside the matter of distributing flyers when the World Chamber of Commerce had just been established, now they had given him a task to welcome guests at the main entrance. As long as a female customer came, he, Nongzhu, had to rely on his good looks to persuade the female customer to buy something. Nongzhu was quite unhappy with this arrangement. However, Yu Qianzhou had made the arrangement in front of the lords of the various kingdoms. Nongzhu couldn't refuse in public and had to give Yu Qianzhou some face. Even if he wanted to refuse, he had to look at the green-winged bat King Wei Chuanqiu who had been eyeing him covetously. Nongzhu could only comfort himself that this skinny bat spirit was just jealous of his good looks. But then again, being handsome did have its advantages. Many female customers became regular customers because of Nongzhu's face. However, the reason why Nongzhu decided to give up was that there were two female guests he was familiar with who came to visit him at the same time. Both of them wanted him to accompany them. However, Nongzhu couldn't separate himself, so he could only accompany one at a time. Because of this, he angered the other female customer who was ignored. That female customer flew into a rage on the spot and took out a large pile of spirit stones to ask Nongzhu to accompany her. As long as Nongzhu accompanied her, she would give him this pile of spirit stones. Hearing this, all the lords looked at Nongzhu with suppressed laughter. Nongzhu was angry. He almost slapped that female customer. "I'm not selling my body." But in terms of fighting, that female customer's cultivation was much higher than his. She was an immortal expert and he probably couldn't take advantage of her. Moreover, the World Commerce Association's rules forbade rudeness to customers. This was the main reason why Nongzhu came to complain. Sigh. I told you to stay in the Southern Sea's violet bamboo forest to protect Furong, Ze, and the others and not come to the immortal dimension to join in the fun, but you just didn't listen. Yu Qianzhou sighed with emotion, and he had an expression as if he should have known this would happen. Bang! Nongzhu slammed the table angrily and suddenly stood up, pointing and scolding, "Don't cry crocodile tears here. Don't think that I don't know that you are deliberately playing tricks on me and forcing me to go back. You heartless bastard. No matter what, I'm a good friend of your master. Now that your master is gone, you're turning your back on me. It's so disappointing." Yu Qianzhou wasn't angry at all. He leaned back on the chair and shrugged, "I really didn't force you. Everyone came to the immortal world to conquer the world, so we naturally have to play to our strengths. Think about it. Although you, Mr. Nongzhu, are a first-class expert in the mortal world, you're not even close to being an expert in the immortal world. Tell me, other than a good face, what other strengths do you have? Since you have such a strong point, I naturally have to let you play to your strengths. If I let others do this, the female customers won't give me face. You've already made those female customers fork out at least a few 100 million divine-grade spirit stones. To be honest, I'm not willing to let you go even if you want to. How about this? Why don't you stay and try again? Maybe you'll get used to it after a long time. Shut up. Nongzhu gritted her teeth and said, don't give me that, you win. I don't want to play anymore, I want to go back. You really want to go back? Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up. He stood up and walked to Nongzhu's side, asking solemnly, think about it carefully, I don't want to force you. Do you want to go back or stay? I can't keep you company, I want to go back. This shout almost caused Yu Qianzhou's face to be covered in spittle. Yu Qianzhou didn't say anything else and immediately brought him to another room. There was a teleportation array that he had pretended to set up. A burst of smoke gradually dissipated, revealing the underground palace that the meditation cultivator had dug out. Nongzhu snorted coldly, flicked his sleeves and left. Yu Qianzhou shouted from behind, send my regards to Furong and Ze. Nongzhu ignored him, leaving Yu Qianzhou shaking his head with a bitter smile. The reason why he deliberately forced Nongzhu to leave was because he was worried about Furong and the others' safety. He still had no idea what was going on with that unkillable Yan Zhuixing. There were almost no top experts in the mortal world. If Yan Zhuixing appeared again, ordinary spirit-severing realm experts would not be his opponent. Leaving a late-stage spirit-severing realm expert, and one who had a close relationship with Nongzhu, would put him at ease. Even if Nongzhu could not deal with Yan Zhuixing, at least she could buy some time for him to come. After sending Nongzhu away, not long after Yu Qianzhou returned to the World Chamber of Commerce, someone came to report that Shui Mingqing of Chaotian Palace had come and was in the living room. Yu Qianzhou raised his eyebrows. He knew that Chaotian Palace wanted to check the situation because they did not see Immortal Palace deal with him after waiting for a few days. It would not be long before people from other sects also came. He sneered and said, if people from other sects come to find me, just say that I am not here. The lord in charge of running errands immediately took the order and left. As soon as Yu Qianzhou arrived at the living room on the 6th floor, Shui Mingqing strode over, cupped his hands and apologized, Brother Yu, I'm really sorry, I can't come out. He immediately told the reason, and it was similar to what Wan Ling had told him. Seeing that he told the truth without hiding anything, Yu Qianzhou finally felt a little estrangement in his heart. He waved his hand and invited him to sit down. The two looked at each other, and Yu Qianzhou asked, what did your master ask you to come this time? Did he respond to the purchase of elixirs from World Chamber of Commerce? Shui Mingqing hesitated for a while, and finally told the truth, actually, this time, my master mainly asked me to ask you whether people from Immortal Palace came to find you. As for the purchase of elixirs, my master said that your World Chamber of Commerce has caused too much trouble. Not to mention Immortal Palace, even Heartless Palace will not let you go. There is no way to cooperate with you at all. In the short term, Chaotian Palace will not consider cooperating with you. He said that if you ask about this, don't say anything definite. Just say that you are still waiting for the sect's reply, and he can't make the decision. Damn it! When Yu Qianzhou heard this, he kicked over the rattan chair on the side and sneered in his heart. He now saw clearly that in the case of unequal strength, he was not even qualified to cooperate with others on an equal footing. He was completely snubbed by others, and they did not treat him seriously. It seemed that he had no choice but to play hard. Seeing that he was angry, Shui Mingqing immediately comforted him, actually, you don't have to be angry. My master did this because he doesn't want to take responsibility. If you really want to purchase elixirs, there is a way. What way? Yu Qianzhou asked casually with a lack of interest. Wuxiong, the commander of Immortal Palace's foreign affairs, will be getting married soon. At that time, even if the sect leaders do not come in person to congratulate him, they will send people whose status in the sect is second only to the sect leader to attend. Chaotian Palace naturally cannot avoid it. You and Mu Tianjiao are friends. Why don't you take the opportunity to go to congratulate her and contact the people in Chaotian Palace who can speak to you directly, so that you don't have to push the blame to my master here. Shui Mingqing came up with such an idea. I will go to Mu Tianjiao's wedding. Yu Qianzhou pondered and suddenly set up a soundproof enchantment. He dragged the rattan chair to sit closer and asked, "Can you find a way to help me get the elixir recipe of your Chaotian Palace?" This. Shui Mingqing was shocked, but he knew that he was tied to Yu Qianzhou's boat. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. It's not difficult to get some ordinary elixir recipes that the disciples in the sect use to practice. But that kind of elixir recipe doesn't seem to be a secret in the immortal world. You can also ask about it elsewhere. I think the elixir recipe you want is not such an ordinary elixir recipe. Yu Qianzhou chuckled, sat up straight and said, "To tell you the truth. We are brothers, so I have nothing to hide from you. I originally wanted to purchase elixirs from your Chaotian Palace through normal channels, but your Chaotian Palace simply disdains to earn our little money. Since that's the case, there is nothing more to say. I am a straightforward person, and I don't have so many twists and turns in my mind. I don't care what kind of elixir recipe it is, I want all of them. You can think of a way to help me borrow a copy of these elixir recipes." He still had some self-cultivation. Although to put it bluntly, he still used the word borrow in a roundabout way, so that it wouldn't sound too bad to say, steal. Ah! Shui Mingqing was so shocked that he jumped up and waved his hand repeatedly. This is impossible. I haven't even broken through to the immortal realm, and I don't even have the qualification to enter the scripture-seeking pavilion. How can I steal all the elixir recipes? What's more, the real top elixir recipes are carried by my sect leader. I can't even get close to him, so how can I steal things from him? Oh! No hurry, don't worry. I'm not even in a hurry, so why are you in a hurry? Sit down and talk slowly. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand to comfort him. He knew that he was a little too hasty, but there was no other way. He still had a large group of brothers waiting behind him. How can I not be anxious? Brother Yu, this is too dangerous. Don't scare me. I really can't do anything. Shui Mingqing said with a bitter smile. There is always a way to solve things. Aren't we discussing it? Yu Qianzhou coughed and said with a smile, "Is your scripture-seeking pavilion the place where elixir recipes are kept?" Not only elixir recipes, but also the various cultivation techniques of my Chaotian Palace. Seeing that he still didn't give up, Shui Mingqing put on an attitude of explaining the pros and cons and said in detail, "Elixir recipes and cultivation techniques are divided into levels. Only when you have reached the corresponding cultivation level will you be qualified to enter the corresponding level to read. As for the scripture-seeking pavilion, outsiders can't barge into it at all. Not only are there many experts guarding it from the outside, but there are also experts on every level. Most importantly, every Jade archive has a restriction placed on it. It can't be duplicated, and it can't be taken out of the scripture-seeking pavilion. Otherwise, the contents of the Jade archive will immediately self-destruct, and you won't be able to get anything out of it. Furthermore, the guards will be alerted the moment the Jade archive self-destructs. Think about it, under such strict protection, who can steal it? You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.